to ensure the sacrifices of the 9 million heroes who served during this difficult chapter of our country's history are remembered for generations to come. I signed into law the Vietnam War Recognition Act of 2017, designated 29 March of each year as National Vietnam War Veterans Day. Throughout this commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War and every March 29th thereafter, we will honor all those who answered our nation's call to duty. We vow to never again confuse personal disapproval of war with prejudice against those who honorably wear the uniform of our armed forces. With conviction, our nation pledges our enduring respect, our continuing care, and our everlasting commitment to all Vietnam veterans, unquote. All were called to serve. None could self-determine where they were stationed, and all were seen in the same way by a country that could not separate the war from the warrior. Each person who served during this period earned and rightly deserves our profound thanks. So tonight, we honor those from Brentwood and our community who, in President Abraham Lincoln's words, gave their last full measure of devotion. Those whom to us are family are also counted among the 58,281 men and women whose names are engraved in the polished black granite of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, also known as the Wall in Washington, D.C. We specifically call out by name our fallen: Sergeant Charles Ray McCurtain, Jr. of Brentwood, PFC Wayne August Getch, Brentwood, PFC Kenneth Ralph Peterson, Brentwood, PFC Armando Villa, Brentwood, PFC Martin Frederick Sterwood of Oakley. Please join me in a moment of silence, respecting their collective sacrifice. Finally, as we are gathered here tonight, I wish I could give you more. I wish I could take away the pain, the disrespect that you all endured as Vietnam veterans, but I can't do that. 50 years is a long time to wait to get that thanks and to get that respect and honor that you deserve. But on behalf of our community, myself, VFW Post 10789, I want to thank and honor the Vietnam veterans living in our community. And accordingly, I ask everyone who served on active duty at any time during 1 November 1955 to 15 May 1975, regardless of location, to please stand if you're able, or raise your hand if you're not able to stand. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have at least one Vietnam veteran in our presence. Please go ahead and thank him for his service.
Thank you for your service.
So I'll close. I only have 20 seconds left, so now there's no denying that 50 years is a long time to wait. Regardless, it is vital that each and every one of you Vietnam veterans and your families understand the prominent place you now occupy in the conscience of our nation. We missed an opportunity years ago. We can't undo that or the pain and disrespect you endured, but we can try to do the right thing today and show the high measure of esteem we have for you. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
The next speaker is Miriam.
Hello. I just wanted to come by today. It's kind of to address two matters linking into each other, but one of them is something that is happening so far in the city of Brentwood. So I've been here for over 10 years now, and there has never been any homeless in my area, basically. But throughout this year, there's been an increase. I do live on Lone Tree, and every time I go into like Target or any store, I do see them outside, and my heart does hurt for them because everyone's walking past them. These are human beings that we are seeing with no food, no shelter, no resources. And I feel like as the city of Brentwood, we should be doing more to help these people, especially it was winter, it's been raining. These people do need more resources or shelters or something. And I'm coming here maybe because me as an individual, maybe if someone can give me advice on like starting something that like could help them out. And I'm addressing this because I am also Middle Eastern. So I know we've came before to address the wanting to add to the agenda of passing a resolution about what's happening in Palestine with also Israel. But it's getting worse and worse every day the longer that we wait. The other day, there has been a photo leaked of a Palestinian woman who was raped inside of a hospital. Her husband and son were forced to watch or else they were going to get killed. There's 30,000 people now who have been killed. Every day that we wait, there's more and more people. Whether what side you're on, we just can put a stop to this, or at least let us send aid to our people. It is the holy month of Ramadan right now. We are able, I'm grateful, like in the next hour, I'm going to be able to break my fast. I'm going to be able to eat. Over there, they're cooking grass. These are our people. We just want to help them out, but we're not able to. Us as the people, they're not listening to us. So I feel like if every city was able to at least pass something saying that we want this to end too, because this is our money going to donate to this. So I'm just here today requesting that maybe we can come together, like to form an agenda to maybe pass a resolution for this to be passed. Because myself, you don't need to be Muslim or Middle Eastern to see that this is wrong. And it's not even just for Palestine. This is just a start to end on both sides suffering. If we are able to pass something for this, maybe other countries who no one talks about, it will be able to. We are the most powerful country. Our word can help many people, but if no one gets involved in only focusing on other matters and ignoring these people, who is going to help them? And that's why I'm coming today to ask, so we can maybe all come together to form an agreement, maybe to pass a resolution. And I know there's like separate sides saying this is right, this is wrong, but overall on both sides, people are getting harmed and there's no need for that. So that's why I came today. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no additional speaker cards.
Thank you. At this time, we will close public comments and move into presentations. Presentation D1 is Chief Herbert is going to present the Police Department's annual performance report and request that the city clerk set the timer for 10 minutes. Chief Herbert.
Okay, let's get started. So, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm here to present the 2023 performance report for the Police Department. Purpose of this report is for accountability, transparency, and to assess staffing needs. There's 3 categories that I'll be going over, which is response times, incidents of crime and crime rate, and our workload. So when we talk about response times, we're talking about priority 1 and priority 2 calls. Priority 1 calls are emergencies or immediate life-threatening situations. Priority 2 calls are high priority calls where we expect officers to respond when available and as soon as possible. On the chart in front of you are the response times over the last 7 years since the inception of the dispatch center. As you can see, this is the response times for our dispatchers from the time the dispatcher receives the call until the time she broadcasts that call. And as you can see, our priority 1 calls are 36 seconds and our priority 2 calls are 6 minutes and 42 seconds. And with regards to officers' response times, from the time an officer is dispatched to a call to the time they arrive on scene, our priority 1 calls have a difference of 9 seconds from 22 to 23, and our priority 2 calls have a 10-second difference between 22 and 23. This past year, we went to a new reporting system related to crime. We went to the national-based reporting system, and the California version of it is Cybers. The national is NIBRS. We implemented this in February of 2023. This slide can tend to be a little bit confusing, but the difference between our old reporting system, which was UCR, had 2 categories that were Part 1 and Part 2 crimes, and only required us to report on 8 reportable offenses. NIBRS Cybers requires 45 total reportable offenses into 2 groups, Group A and Group B. So it's a more granular look at the types of crime we're dealing with in town. Best way to describe this is if we had a homicide, robbery, and kidnapping all in one incident, Previously, we would report the highest crime on there, which is the homicide. We would report that under UCR, and the other two would not be reported. Under the NIBR Cybers reporting system, we would report all three of those crimes. So the comparison is going to be a little bit off because it's not apples to apples. So in our violent crime group A for 2023, you can see we've had some high and lows, but overall it's down. We were down 80% or 80 reportable offenses. Group A property crimes, we were up 126. So the total reportable offenses for 2023 was up 1,434. Again, this doesn't mean that we had 1,434 more crimes. It just means that we reported on more than we had in the previous years. When we talk about clearance rates, this is our ability to clear crime, make arrests, and close cases. On the chart in front of you, you can see the crimes that I compared 2022's crimes that we used. Again, next year this will look different, but as you can see, the clearance rates for these crimes from murder, justifiable homicide, rape, robbery, arson, assault, burglary, theft, and auto theft. When we talk about workload per officer, we break it down into two sections. Reactive workload, which is crime incidents, calls for service, cases taken, and collisions. And proactive police work, arrests, citations, and officer-initiated traffic stops. In our reactive workload, we had 1,300 more calls for service. We took 439 less reports, but we had the 1,434 more instances reportable crime. Again, because of the numbers between the new reporting system, you can see that not all of those calls for service generated a crime. So our workload, reactive workload increased by 6% between 22 and 23. Our proactive workload decreased by 1%. Department overview, we'll talk about staffing. The department has 72 sworn officers. I would like to highlight on here our K-9 officers. Those positions are currently vacant. We were facing some legislation that would have extremely limited the use of K-9s. And since both dogs had retired and weren't in service, and due to staffing levels, we were waiting to see how that legislation worked out and get staff to be available to send for training. It's a 10-week training per officer. So we just have not had the staff to send them. So our current staffing levels, again, we have 72 sworn positions. We're currently 66 of those positions are filled. 23 of the 72 are assigned to non-patrol functions. 49 are assigned to patrol. That breaks down as 8 sergeants and 41 officers. What we actually have working right now is 5 sergeants and 1 acting sergeant and 27 officers covering all 4 beats, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Right now, we're averaging approximately 5 officers and a sergeant per shift. Some shifts are down to our minimums of 4 and 1. I know the 5th beat is a priority with council and is a priority with the department. The issue is I need to have 6 officers and 1 sergeant per shift in order to keep that beat filled and give officers time off and to allow for shift shortages besides time off. Engage is a system we use to send out surveys to survey people that call our dispatch center. As you can see here in 2023, we sent out over 50,000 surveys. 23% of the people responded. 92% of the respondents were satisfied with the professionalism of our dispatchers. 94 were satisfied with the professionalism of the officer that they interacted with. 92% of the respondents were satisfied with the response time to their call. 89 were satisfied with the overall experience with the Brentwood Police Department. And 80% feel safe being or living in Brentwood. Before I go into community engagement, I did want to address, Councilmember Mendoza had asked that I address the bicycle swerve crews that are, we've been engaging throughout the city. This is an issue with our residents. It's extremely scary for a driver to have someone on a bicycle on a wheelie coming at them. It startles them. We've taken measures to try to identify these kids. Normally when there's 15 to 20 of them riding bikes, it's hard for an officer in a patrol car to corral them or actually catch them. When we do, the officers will attempt to identify them. And if a citation is warranted, they can issue citations. We've tried to identify some of the kids through photos that were provided by citizens through the schools. What we're finding is a lot of these kids don't live in our city. They're using social media, as sideshows do, to get these meetings together. And from the mouth of one of the kids, they enjoy coming to Brentwood because our streets are nice. So we are doing our best to identify them and find a way to stop this from occurring, whether it be contacting their parents. We can't force parents to come pick them up, but we can contact them, issue them the citations for roadway violations and or helmet if it's warranted. One of our strategic initiatives is community engagement. So I wanted to share with you some of the things we've done over the last year. We participated in the Veterans Celebration. We do the Special Olympics Law Enforcement Torch Run every year. As part of that is also Tip-A-Cop. This is Hometown Halloween, Dias de la Muerte, Sip and Scoop, ice cream with the officers, Shop with a Cop, basketball with our SROs and officers at the middle schools. And finally, we did a bike rodeo. So in closing, I'd like to thank the men and women of our department for all their hard work over the last year. As you know, 2023 brought us two very stressful incidents. An officer-involved shooting that saved the life of a woman being held hostage, and an officer being stabbed in the neck in a separate incident. These incidents demanded exceptional courage and composure from our officers. The outcome of both these incidents could have been very different had the officers involved not relied on their training to get them through it. These events highlight the professionalism and dedication that defines our entire department. The way our department as a whole operates daily with professionalism and dedication to the community makes me proud to be their chief. I want to thank the community, city staff, and finally, City Council for their ongoing support of all the members of the Brentwood Police Department. This collaborative spirit is essential for us to succeed. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for the chief? Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Chief, for that report. I wondered if you could address Mr. Dorman's concerns about what to do if you see a resident who is a danger to themselves and others.
Yes, if someone feels that a resident is a danger to themselves or to the people around them, we encourage them to call 911 if they feel it's an emergency, or the non-emergency number. Officers will respond out and evaluate the person, their mental well-being, and whether they are a danger to themselves or others. And if a mental health hold is warranted, they can put a mental health hold on them, or they can evaluate them for being under the influence of alcohol or drugs and then take appropriate action from there.
Thank you.
I have a question. So the bicycle gangs, I don't know what we're going to call the kids, it is causing a big issue. I know you said you give them citations when you can. I know other cities are doing things like impounding the bicycles, like having fines in place. Do we have any ordinances around that? And do you think we need to do that right now if we don't?
We don't. I have had, one of our sergeants has been pretty involved in this, and I had asked him specifically to research the ability for us to impound bikes. He had heard another city was doing it. He reached out to that city, and that was not true. They hadn't begun doing that. They haven't found a loophole or a way to be able to seize the bikes as we do cars. So at this point, could we look into that into the future? Yes, we are trying to find every avenue we can to prevent these kids from not only harming themselves, but harming our residents, right? Because we don't want to be the person driving that car that hits that child, right? That's just as traumatic for the driver as it would be for the child that got hit by the car. So we're trying to find the best way to balance out the enforcement side of it, prevent it from happening, and then also preventing injury to our citizens, both the drivers and the bicyclists.
Okay. My other question was, you said you had 41 officers, but 27 are actually working. What's the
Yes, ma'am.
balance? What's happening with the balance of the officers currently that are not?
So we have 6 in field training, so they're not deployable. As soon as they get out of FTO, they'll be put onto the street and take a beat. So that 27 will go up by 6.
When do you think that's going to happen?
So I have one getting ready to come out this next week. I have another one that should be out in the next 2 months, most likely. Both of those were lateral officers from other agencies. And then the 4 that graduated from the academy, they still have probably another 8 to 10 weeks in field training. We have 36 entry-level applicants that we're going to be testing in the next 2 weeks. We have 2 lateral officers from other Bay Area jurisdictions that are looking to come to our city. They live local, so they'll be going through the testing process. So I have 6 vacancies total, and then I also have 6 officers out on the job injuries or medical reasons, that type of thing. So that's where our deficit comes in.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So if we're waiting on 6 and then we have 6 out, that's 12, but we have 27, so there's 15 that are just out on leave for other reasons?
No,
That's 27 minus 6 minus 6?
no, 27, it'd be the plus 6.
Oh, I'm sorry, the 41 minus 27, right?
Yeah,
That's
that
your
leaves
balance.
us 17, right?
Okay, so that's 12.
So that leaves us 17. We
Okay.
have 6 vacancies. And then we have 6 out on injury
Okay,
and 6 in field training.
okay,
And
perfect, thank you. So our public knows that we are doing everything we can to fill all of those roles, so thank you very
yes,
much, I appreciate it.
yes, we are. And the injuries are crippling to the department. It's hard when officers get injured, and getting them back as soon as possible is always our best avenue. But as I say, we average 5 and 1. Some shifts are at bare minimum of 4 and 1, which is 1 officer per beat, which means if one of those officers needs time off, it has to be backfilled with overtime.
Okay, thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Okay, if there are no further questions of the chief, thank you, Chief, for that presentation. This time we'll move into informational reports from council members, committees, liaison, and staff. And I'll begin with Councilman Orlemans this evening.
Good evening. Since our last council meeting, I did a walking tour of the downtown with Amy, and we talked about the Downtown Coalition's plans and thoughts for the areas, what they were looking at, how some of the events were run. It was very informative, lasted a couple hours. It was very informative. I attended the Farmers Market and Makers Boulevard. I attended the Brentwood Police Department annual military report. I watched the lead meeting. I watched the Planning Commission meeting. I attended the ribbon cutting up at the McCollum Trail Overpass. And I attended the Tri-Delta Transit Workers Appreciation Day, where we spent the afternoon or a couple hours with all the transit workers from Tri-Delta Transit. Lunch was catered by Brentwood Fine Meats. I got to serve some of the lunch. It was great. We had a really good time. Also on March 21st, I did a debriefing with the Brentwood Police Department Day Watch at the request of Sergeant Brulette for the 4 officers that were killed 15 years ago in Oakland. We ran down the events. Officer Brulette ran the briefing. All of those guys were very close friends of mine. So I got to add a personal side to that debriefing and hopefully got a little information out to some of the newer officers, since there were quite a few of them in the room. That was my couple weeks.
Yes, we'll go to Councilperson Mendoza.
Yes, since the last time we've met, I had an event where I spoke to residents at Trilogy, a presentation from Erin Levine around composting and recycling. I told her we had taken care of it. I said it's very expensive. She said grants. I said they're not giving us any grants so that we know of right now. It's still expensive even with the grants, all the composting. The lead meeting was fantastic. We've reviewed our tobacco ordinance that will be coming to council. The McCollum Trail ribbon cutting, attended the PC meeting for the yard. There is a lot of online chatter about that one, so that is coming. The Cal Cities League Latino Caucus Subcommittee on Communication, the Cal Cities Latino Caucus Board of Directors meeting, went down to Burbank last week for the Housing Committee meeting. I will tell you, it got very heated in the Housing Committee. A lot of cities are threatening to leave the league because we feel that they have abandoned us and taken the side of legislators. And if that continues, that is an item I will bring forward. If they're going to lobby for legislators and not for cities, then we should probably think about not attending. Let's see, and then today we had a division legislative discussion forum where we talked again about what we did last Friday and had some interesting words about Buffy Wicks and Scott Wiener.
I'm sorry, Councilperson Pierson. I'm going to get that right at some point. Okay, Council Member, yes. Councilmember Pierson.
All right. So before I start my informational report, I found that this was the proper time. I'd like to address specifically Mr. Mayor and the council to ask for either a council vote or a decision by the mayor. Policy number 110-1, 4.3 has the agenda contents. It has the order of business as follows. It says subject to change by the mayor, vice mayor in the mayor's absence, city manager, or a majority vote of city council. We can change this order. It says call to order and roll call, pledge of allegiance, presentations, public comments, informational reports. I personally feel like the informational reports take so much time away from people who are here, who are waiting for us to get to content. And I would respectfully ask that we do what the majority of other cities do, and to keep our informational reports at the end, change it to be at the end of our sessions before we adjourn versus at the beginning. We have a lot of people I've seen several times sitting here waiting almost until midnight, sometimes after midnight, to hear an agenda item. And I think more importantly, it would be best if we left these informational reports at the end. They are recorded, people can go back and watch them, but I think this is taking too much time from us given our report out of what we've done in the last 2 weeks, which is good for people who voted for us to hear. But we're not even really, besides some of the reports that you recently gave about what happened, we're not really fully even telling what happened at all those meetings. We tell a little brief snippet. So I think if we have time at the end of the meeting, I would respectfully ask at this time that either by Mr. Mayor or by the majority vote of the council, that we move this location of informational reports to the very end of the meeting. And then I'll give my informational request. And we can talk about, I don't know when we do this, but I'll give my informational report so you all can hear it. On March 13th, I attended with our Vice Mayor the Age-Friendly Committee's meeting. We talked at length about a number of items which will possibly come back to the council. On March the 14th, one of the Juneteenth planning meetings, it's very exciting, was coming for Juneteenth. On March 18th, Council Member Mendoza is right. It was an amazing LUT meeting, and I cannot wait till you all hear and we come back about all of the things recommendations we have on tobacco. March 20th, two things. I was a crazy busy woman. I did the COB Senior Resource Meeting. I know a lot of people were in town. I was in SoCal, so I was able to attend via Zoom, and I can't wait to talk to the Vice Mayor about all the stuff I learned when I was on that meeting. I also then did a Zoom while walking through the Warner Brothers studio for the Juneteenth planning. So that was very interesting because I was on a cart the entire time. March the 21st, we had a very heated, and I'm sad that the young lady left, because there was a huge heated policy committee meeting in Burbank, California on homelessness. I'm of the same opinion of you, Councilmember Mendoza. There was a lot of contention in the room, and I'll be able to bring that forward a little bit later. Really was excited about what the city of Burbank and Los Angeles are doing for homelessness. If anyone wants to know what they've done, please reach out to me via email. I'm happy to call you and tell you, but it's amazing what they've done. And I think that is everything that I've done in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you. Before I go into my report, what is the best way for us to respond to the request from Council Member Pierson? Should we request it for an agenda item at the end, or can we make a move on that right now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So you do have a policy that lets you move items around the agenda. That policy right now says that generally these informational reports will be given at this portion of the meeting, but that those can be moved at the will of the council or indeed of the city manager. If you wanted to, you could on a case-by-case basis, move them to the end of the meeting. If you wanted to make a formal change to the policy that sets out that order, that would be an appropriate future agenda item.
Okay, thank you very much.
In our informational meeting, I was told that at this time I can ask for us to move it in perpetuities now, and it doesn't have to be changed in the writing, but we can all vote and agree to change it in perpetuities to go to the end. So it doesn't have to come as a future agenda item request. It just would be said at the very beginning of each meeting that it's going to happen at the end.
I would like it to be a future agenda item. I think we need to discuss it, and I think we should get public input, right? If we're doing it for the public, let's get the input from the public.
Okay.
I mean, if we're doing it for them, right?
Okay, at this point, I will turn it to the Vice Mayor for her to give her report.
Thank you, and my apologies. I'm still working through some allergy problems. Since the last time we met, I attended the Age-Friendly Communities Ad Hoc meeting, gave a presentation to Trilogy residents, 2 separate meetings for the Community Day of Service Planning. Very excited about that. It's going to be on April 27th. Feel free to reach out to me if you want details on how to get involved with that. Watched both the LUD and the Planning Commission meetings. I went to the McCollum Trail ribbon cutting, and I did think that was a pretty well-attended event. It was very positive. There was a lot of bicyclists crossing the trail. Our mayor was pretty close to the front. Measure X Community Advisory Board meeting to get an idea about funding that was coming to East County and other parts of the county. I did a ride-along with Meals on Wheels as part of their March for Meals annual campaign to bring attention to senior hunger, and of course, meeting with the chief. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the last time we met, I met with Supervisor Burgess' staff and spoke to her as well regarding some community concerns and city concerns. I had the opportunity to meet with the residents of Brentwood. They are 3rd graders. The Odyssey of the Mind is the team that they won first in state. We got to spend the day with them, some of the day today. And if they are a cross-section representation of our future, we are in very good hands and very excited, very loud hands, but very good hands. Also, I met with the chief, police chief, attended the McCollum Trail ribbon cutting for the overpass. Had the opportunity to swear in our new arts commissioners, and I got to meet with a group of the veterans concerning some of their community concerns as well. And I have nothing further to report at this time.
I think you all met with Diane Burgess about Measure X. Can you give an update on the youth center and not happening, the reasons why, and all of that? Because I think the public that was something they were interested in.
Sure, I can give a brief update. Met with the mayor in what's called the Delta 6 community meeting, where we have the city managers and mayors of East County get together once a quarter, talk about random topics. One of the topics recently we discussed briefly was Measure X and the funding for youth centers. We've, for a year and a half, tried to be a strong contender for those funds and have been put on notice, basically, that we're not going to be recipients of those funds based on the facility that we had recommended. They suggested that it was outside of the range of where the primary customer base is, and also the transportation to come as far east Brentwood as you can possibly go. So that site is not going to be eligible, and so that's facility that we'll bring back at another time to talk about disposition. But that site is not eligible. So if we have another site on the northwest corner of Brentwood, they might consider us again at that point. So they're still assessing locations throughout East County.
Would they consider something that's just land and build one there, or is it just like the CD building was a site with the building? Are they looking at both options?
They have a set amount of funds that they're committing, and if it's to build a new building, we'd have to come up with additional funds. The facilities and contenders who are likely to be nominated are likely to have an existing facility because then they can use the funding for capital improvements versus building a whole new building. So it could be either one.
Okay, thank you.
Council Member Pierson.
Since we're doing this now, I'll go ahead and just keep taking up the time. I also met with, I wanted to say Congress and give an update, Congressman DeSaulnier yesterday. And just a quick update on the Port Chicago 50. The conversation was about what what he's doing and what we can continue to do. He wanted to thank us for our proclamation and our resolution that we passed in support. He is working with the Department of Defense, with the Navy on the exoneration of the Port Chicago 50, as well as with Garamendi and with the Contra Costa County Bar Association, as well as other Congress members, to see if with Barbara Lee, before she leaves, if he can bring this back to the floor and see if they can do another presentation to get this going. So just wanted to give you all an update because we did pass a resolution.
Thank you. In addition to that, I do want to thank, I know that a lot of our residents have contacted their state elected officials regarding this. Thank you for doing that, and please continue to do that as well. At this time, we'll move into consent calendar. I would like to pull item F2. Is there any other consent item that you would like to pull?
I would like to pull item F3.
Okay, item F2 and F3. Do we have a motion regarding the rest of the consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to pass the consent calendar except for item F2 and F3.
Second?
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Yes.
I think we've got an ordinance title to read, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Margaret.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brentwood amending Brentwood Municipal Code, Chapter 2.46, Park and Recreation Commission.
Thank you. So we'll move to item F2. This proclamation is proclaiming March 29th, 2024 as Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day. We do have someone representing our local veterans, Mr. Bill Weber, I believe, unless, okay. Then, Bill, I'll meet you at the podium. Thank you. We do have a Vietnam veteran. Al, we are honored that you're with us, and thank you for bringing this to the council previously to let us be aware of some of the areas that we could improve in. Thank you very much for your service, sir. Bill, it is a privilege again to present you a proclamation. You do such an outstanding job representing our local veterans in so many ways. So if you, on behalf of all of our veterans, would receive this proclamation, I'll read it at this time. Whereas the United States of America recognizes the profound sacrifices made by its servicemen and women in the Vietnam War, and whereas on March 29th, 1973, the last American combat troops departed Vietnam, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's history. And whereas the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, often referred to as the Wall, stands as a solemn tribute to the more than 58,000 American soldiers who gave their lives in the conflict. And whereas March 29th provides an opportunity for all Americans to reflect upon the sacrifices made by Vietnam veterans and their families, and to express gratitude for their service and resilience. And whereas it is fitting and proper to set aside a day to honor and commemorate the legacy of those who served in Vietnam, ensuring their sacrifices are never forgotten. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize March 29th, 2024 as Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day, and call upon all residents, organizations, and communities to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies, activities, and remembrance events, paying homage to the valor and sacrifice of Vietnam veterans. Dated this 26th day of March, 2024.
Like to call, ooh, it's loud. I would like to call forth Miss Leslie Marks. Thank you so much, Leslie, if you can stand here. I want to talk about this lovely lady who is standing to my right. Leslie Marks, I became acquainted with her in the passing of the hallways at the courthouse in Contra Costa County. I am currently employed with Key Counsel PC, and we do probate litigation, and I court-appointed counsel, and I've also had the opportunity to serve as a pro tem judge in the probate department. And what I witnessed from Leslie Marks, I couldn't think of anyone else to receive the proclamation for Autism Awareness Month. Ms. Marks has her own company called Marks Paralegal Plus. What Ms. Marks does for the community of people who have differently abled children is amazing. A lot of parents who their children are now turning to the age of majority don't know how to navigate, don't know what to do, and Ms. Marks is there at a very reasonable cost, way different than what attorneys will charge. And she goes above and beyond, spending long hours every single day. In addition to her job that she does, voluntarily, she works in association with getting all of the children to the, why can't I think of it, Special Olympics. Yes. She does Special Olympics. She's had her involvement in the prom. She's had her involvement in getting children to the Warriors game, a lot of children, and she also is the mother to an amazing son who's present here in court. Maybe there he is, back there. So she services our community. A lot of parents appreciate her. A lot of clients have contacted me and on tears, they've just told me how amazing Ms. Marks has been. So today, it gives me an honor to read this to her and to provide her with this award because I believe we should give people their roses while they're living. Whereas autism spectrum disorder, ASD, is a complex neurodevelopmental condition that affects individually differently, impacting communication, social interaction, and behavior. And whereas it is imperative to raise awareness and promote understanding of autism within our communities, fostering acceptance and appreciation for individuals on the spectrum. And whereas the month of April provides an opportunity for education, advocacy, and support for individuals with autism and their families, as well as for promoting inclusion and celebrating the unique strengths and contributions of individuals with autism. And whereas the theme for Autism Awareness Month in April 2024 is #awareness, #acceptance, #appreciation, emphasizing the importance of increasing awareness, fostering acceptance, and showing appreciation from the diverse experiences and perspectives of individuals on the autism spectrum. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the City Council of the City of Brentwood does hereby recognize the month of April 2024 as Autism Awareness Month and encourage all residents to participate in activities and initiatives throughout the month aimed at promoting awareness, acceptance, and appreciation for individuals with autism, dated this 26th day of March 2024. And from this mama of a child who has autism spectrum disorder, who's on the spectrum, I thank and appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Yes, I'm going to be very brief. Thank you all. It's been 11 years, and it's amazing to help the families because they all can't afford it. I'm not rich, but I do the best I can because it's something that has to be done, not necessarily for profit. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Right, thank you. Bye-bye.
This time, we will move back to the consent calendar items. Item F2 and F3, we'll take them together as one motion. Do I have a motion for approval of item F2 and F3?
Move to accept item F2 and F3.
I'll second.
First and a second, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. This time, we'll move into item G, business items. This next item is an informational item related to the AB 2011 application for the O'Hara Apartments project and the city's AB 2011 review process. And Miguel Contreras, Associate Planner, will present. Miguel.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members, and good evening, members of the public. It's Miguel Contreras, City of Brentwood Planning Division. I'm here to present this informational item and seek direction from City Council on future projects like this. So this is for the O'Hara Apartments project, which is a AB 2011 project. Quick overview of the apartment request. An application was submitted January 9th of this year. The application was seeking ministerial approval through the provisions of AB 2011. I think it's important to note that the application was, the same application was submitted twice before last year, but was found to be inconsistent with the provisions of AB 2011 by staff, and therefore they were deemed inconsistent on August 31st and December 19th of last year. However, with this third submittal of January 9th, city staff found the application to be consistent with the provisions of AB 2011, and staff issued a letter letting the applicant know that their application is consistent. That was March 9th of this year, and that's at that 60 days from the project submittal. From now, the city staff has until April 8th to issue a approval for the project, and that would be 90 days from the project's initial submittal. Residential development and commercial zones. So this is this came about from the Affordable Housing and High Roads Job Act of which is also known as AB 2011. It became effective July of last year. And this AB 2011 allows for streamlined ministerial approval of multifamily residential development that has affordable housing, and it would be allowed in zones where commercial activities are principally permitted, specifically office, retail, or parking. Continuing the AB 2011 overview. So AB 2011 allows residential development in commercial zones. This development can be 100% affordable or mixed income. It can be 100% residential or mixed use. And AB 2011 does set density standards and other development standards, and these are contingent on the site itself and the project type. The approval process for an AB 2011 project is streamlined ministerial approval, which AB 2011 kind of takes away the discretion that typical residential projects are accustomed to. And AB 2011 does set labor requirements of prevailing wage. Affordable housing requirements. So mixed income affordable housing projects must provide a minimum of on-site affordable units. And there's different criteria for rental or ownership. In the case for the O'Hara apartment project, it's going to be rental. So they would have to provide 8% very low income and 5% extremely low income units, or 15% lower income units. In the case of the O'Hara apartments, they're providing 15% lower income units. And these lower income units would need to be deed restricted for 55 years. AB 2011 does interact a little bit with our local and inclusionary housing requirements. So if the project is subject to our local inclusionary housing standards, which this project would have been otherwise, it would have to either meet the requirements or the affordable requirements by AB 2011, which is 15% of the units, or the local requirements, which ours are 13%, whichever is higher. So that's why the applicant's going with the 15%. And then additionally, the project would have to meet the lowest income targeted by either policy. In this case, the Brentwood policy would prevail since we do require 3% very low income units. Project eligibility and site criteria. So for a project to be eligible for AB 2011, it would have to be a legal parcel within an urban area. It would need to abut a commercial corridor that is between 70 and 100 feet in width. And AB 2011 defines a commercial corridor as any highway that is public and that it has a right-of-way of 70 feet in width and no greater than 150 feet in width. 75% of the perimeter of the site must adjoin parcels developed with urban uses. AB 2011 defines this or states that parcels across the street still count. The site cannot be adjoined to a parcel where more than a third of the square footage on the site is dedicated to industrial uses. And the parcel has to abut a commercial corridor and has to have a 50-foot minimum frontage. So in the case for the O'Hara Apartments, the site has 200 feet of frontage, over 200 feet of frontage. The project site has to be less than 20 acres. It can't be on a site with 1 to 4 existing dwelling units. It can't be zoned for single family. And there can't be any demolitions of historic structures or affordable housing within the last 10 years. Height and density requirements. So the density requirements per AB 2011 are dependent on the size of the site and the length or the width of the right-of-way. So specifically for the O'Hara Apartments, the project would need to meet 30 dwelling units per acre. AB 2011 states that it has to meet this minimum and that the jurisdiction can't place a cap on a maximum density. Other examples, or not other examples, but the other criteria for height is the height limit shall be the greater of the following, which would be the currently permitted height per the zone. And this is what applies to the O'Hara Apartments. The current zone, which is C3, allows 40-foot maximum height, and therefore that's what the project would be subject to. Setback requirements. So setback requirements under AB 2011 are pretty vast and a little bit confusing, and I'm going to focus solely on the ones that apply to this project specifically. So for frontage, where the project fronts the commercial corridor, there's actually no setbacks required. It could abut the property. And the only setbacks would be parking. Parking needs to be set back at least 25 feet from the commercial corridor. Not only that, but the building must be within 10 feet of the property line for at least 80% of the frontage. So it's, I guess its intent is to create a more urban type of environment. Frontage on the side street, the building must be within 10 feet of the property line for at least 60% of the frontage. Along property lines that abut residential uses, the ground floor would need to be set back 10 feet from property line. Any upper floors need to be set back 7 feet from the floor below them. But this standard doesn't really apply to this project since it's set back from residential uses way more than 10 feet. Development standards and design review. So AB 2011 takes away the city's ability to require parking, except for bicycle parking, electrical vehicle parking, and accessible parking. And the project would need to incorporate objective zoning, subdivision, and design review standards for either the closest zone allowing the required multifamily residential density, or if required density does not exist, zone allowing greater multifamily residential density or greatest. Ministerial review for projects of less than 150 units. So once an application is submitted, the jurisdiction has 60 days to inform the applicant of any inconsistencies with AB 2011. If no inconsistencies are identified, then the jurisdiction would have to inform the applicant that their application is consistent. And then that would give the jurisdiction 30 additional days to conduct the ministerial review and objective design standards review. At that 90 days, the jurisdiction would need to issue an approval for the project. It's important to note that if the applicants are not notified of inconsistencies within the applicable timeline, then the project would be deemed compliant with the qualifying criteria. CEQA and other requirements. So qualifying AB 2011 projects must be reviewed on a ministerial basis, so no discretion, and they are exempt from CEQA. Furthermore, local jurisdictions are not permitted to require any discretionary approvals. AB 2011 projects are eligible for density bonuses, incentives, concessions, and waivers under the density bonus law. The city cannot adopt standards that apply only to AB 2011 projects. The AB 2011 project must comply with SB 330 replacement housing requirements. So that's if a parcel did have existing low-income housing, SB 330 requires the developer to replace that housing. However, this standard doesn't apply to this project since it's a vacant law right now. And AB 2011 projects must be included in the Housing Element Annual Progress Report. So that's a little bit of the silver lining to this, is that we would be getting additional low-income units to report that are slightly greater than our 13%. So moving on specifically to the O'Hara Apartments. So the project site's located at 7460 Lone Tree Way, which is the northwest corner of Lone Tree Way and O'Hara Avenue. The project site has a general plan land use designation of general commercial, and it is within the Thoroughfare Commercial Zoning District, C3. The project site is 0.779 acres. And moving on to the actual proposal. So the proposal is 26-unit mixed income apartments. It is proposed at 3 stories, 40 feet. It has a proposed density of 33 dwelling units per acre. And its affordability component would be 4 low-income units and 1 very low-income unit, which makes the apartments 19% affordable. The project does qualify for a density bonus, and the applicant is requesting waivers from the interim objective design standards, and these are detailed below. Design review site. So ingress, egress to the site would be right in, right out from both entrances. So the O'Hara side of the project and the Lone Tree side of the project. The applicant's proposing 38 parking spaces. Out of those, 15 would be garage spaces and 23 would be surface spaces. These numbers include the EV parking that's required. Bicycle parking, the applicant is providing 15 bicycle parking spaces, 13 long-term, which are located within the building, and 2 short-term, which are located outside of the building. The application does meet the the city's trash enclosure requirements, as it is per the city standards. Design review architecture. So the apartments themselves are of a contemporary style, which is linear forms, has a flat roof and recessed balconies. The building materials would be stucco, board and batten siding, porcelain tile, and brick veneer. Requested waivers. I'll give a quick summary of the requested waivers, or so I don't have to read all of them, but I can if requested. So the first waiver that the applicant seeks relates to the objective design standard that requires a project to break up the wall plane by creating breaks in every 40 feet. And the second waiver that's requested is similar to the first. It's they're seeking relief from having to break up the facade of the building. The third waiver, it also relates to the same thing, breaking up the facade to the building, but this is from areas of the building that can only be seen from not a private street. And then the fourth waiver, which in reality it's incorporates other standards, but the fourth waiver seeks relief from providing shared and private usable open space. And once this waiver is granted, it makes development standards 3.5B through D inapplicable, since the project is not providing any usable open or private or shared open space. Staff requests. So staff requests direction for any future AB 2011 projects. Staff has identified the following options. The first option would be that staff complete the ministerial review and consideration of the AB 2011 project and provide City Council with a report such as the one I'm currently doing right now. The second option would be to have staff complete the ministerial review and consideration of the project, but not provide City Council with a report. And lastly, we could have the Planning Commission or City Council actually be the ones that conduct a ministerial review and consideration for the AB 2011 project applications. It's important to note that with the very strict statutory deadlines associated with such with these applications, this could be pretty difficult to manage. If the City Council opts for this option, staff would develop a process to bring back for future City Council review and consideration. That would conclude my presentation, and I'm open to questions.
Question of staff regarding this, Councilperson Pierson?
Thank you for that. That was a wonderful report. And I do have a question for our city attorney. Just for the residents, can you please tell the residents what it means by ministerial basis, the review? Just a quick.
Sure. So a ministerial review means that the decision-making body can't offer any discretionary review. That is, your review must be limited to items that are purely objective, that have no room for discretion or disagreement as to the uses. Many of the ministerial approvals that the city currently offers are for things such as building permits, for example. Those sorts of items don't come to the Planning Commission or City Council. Instead, you all see, and the Planning Commission sees, discretionary items. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. Can we open up the map? Because I looked at the street and I don't see 70 feet. Per the vehicular code, it says it has to be for vehicles. So you can't count the center median. So can you show me how you calculated 70 feet?
Let me bring up Google Earth so I could show the whole.
You can put the GIS map, that way you can just actually measure it, because I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but it didn't look like 70 feet to me. When I do both sides of where the vehicles traveled, it's less than that.
And as I pull this up, the way I measured this was from curb to curb.
It can't be from curb to curb, because if we look at the Vehicle Code 360, highway is a place for a, where whatever nature publicly maintained and open to the use of public for purposes of vehicular travel. So because you don't travel on the median, you can't include the median in your 70.
It has to be just where vehicles travel. 2011 doesn't apply to the median.
So I would defer this to the city attorney.
So, yes, thank you for bringing up that question. We respectfully disagree. We understand the vehicle code definition. Our definition of vehicle right-of-way, we believe is consistent with the state's and includes not only the lanes of travel, but also, in fact, the gutter, curb, and back of sidewalk. So I know Miguel's bringing up the measurements here.
But it doesn't say vehicle right-of-way. When we've had bills before, they specify vehicle right-of-way. This specifically says for vehicular travel, which is different than right-of-way.
I understand. We believe this meets the definition. The traditional understanding of right-of-way does include medians, and we don't see any ability to excise that from
Can you
this.
find source data for that? Because we're going to decide on this today, and what I've seen is that it does not, and you're saying it does, and this is kind of a big thing. And I had emailed Alexis about it. Unfortunately, she was out. But as it stands, I don't think it applies to 2011. I don't think this project does.
I understand your concern. I would respectfully disagree. We'll let Miguel bring up the measurements so that everyone can see what those look like.
All right, so here's how I measured. It's from curb to curb. It is actually 75.46 feet. And just for right now, I measured the median, which is 5.19 feet, which I still believe.
Well, I think we'd have to get a surveyor out there to do the exact measurement, right? To figure out if it's below 70. Because this is just our GI. We would need a surveyor to go out and do the exact measurement. So at this moment, I would say that we go measure and we actually define if we can include the median or not, and we hold off on this 2011. So I respectfully disagree, and my job is to represent the people, and I think that this is what I need to do to represent them adequately.
I understand, and thank you for that. I would say that at this point, this particular application is not awaiting council decision. This particular application has been deemed to be compliant, and that timeline has run. So staff is here to report on that determination and to look for input on the future, how the council would like to have these determinations brought back to you. So I hear what you're saying.
I think that's highly inappropriate that you would come once it's compliant. I think you should have come and spoken to us before it was compliant, because there's many times that we don't agree with the way that staff reviews reports. Let's just go back to Hanson Lane. I'm frustrated and I'm very upset. And I've been let down. And you've let the people of Brentwood down. I just hope you know that.
Respectfully. So the city's process.
Katie, let's move on, because respectfully, it's not respectful to come to us after the fact. It's not.
I would just like to explain the actual process here. When land use decisions are brought to the Planning Commission or to City Council, that process is set out in the municipal code. So each land use decision, whether it needs a conditional use permit, a rezone, design review, the steps for that are laid out in the municipal code, and so that is what staff follows. Because this is an AB 2011 project, there are no steps for that identified in the municipal code, so there's no requirement that this come directly to you. And because of the very truncated timelines associated with these applications, and given the fact that we don't have any requirements for ministerial approvals to come to the commission or council, it was determined that for this very first 2011 project, staff had to go this way to meet the timelines and make sure that this process was followed. We're asking for direction tonight on whether you would like to change that process in the future. And as Miguel indicated, that would necessitate bringing back an ordinance for you to approve so that staff has a process to follow in the future.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is, I will do what is required. I will not do what the people of Brentwood would prefer. Because we all know how the people of Brentwood feel about this. We do. I mean, it's not a secret.
it would have been nice for you to come to us before this was approved by staff. And I don't want to get businessy on this. This is people's lives and this is people's way of living. And that has to trump everything. The way we show up has to be for them. And we could keep going back and forth and you can keep coming back at me every time I say something. But
Mr. Mayor, I feel like it's getting to discussion, and I would ask that we open up the public comment so that then we can all chime in for discussion.
Okay, do we have any further clarifying questions of staff regarding this? Okay, at this time then, we will open public comments regarding this item. Margaret?
At this time, the public present in the chambers and on Zoom are permitted to address the city council on this agenda item. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're in person, please file a speaker card. We'll take public comment in the chambers, followed by Zoom. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes. Your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item or after the timer has expired. And we received no written public comments on this item. And I have one speaker card. I'll call on Danny.
Okay, let's start with, then why are we all here? If this is already etched in stone, which it sounds like it is, even though there was a chart that demonstrated, I thought, 60 days of doing something and then 30 days of doing something else, and then moving forward from there. I thought that's what I read. I thought that's what I heard. And I thought then within that 60 days are at the very least the single issue that was brought up. That's what I thought. And I'm trying to be the new and improved Danny Dorman. I'm trying not to go into my usual rants. It's making it hard, though, because the city attorney, the city staff work for us. They shouldn't be bending over backwards to meet whatever the developer wants. It was denied a couple of times before, from what I understand. I'd like to know, what did they do to make it in compliance this time? Because it just sounds like all they did was wait for AB 11 to come in and then, oh, there's nothing we can do. Oh. And it is sad. Honestly, as I was sitting back there, I was going to bring up what I always bring up when you talk about new development, which is water. How are we going to supply this new group of people with basic water and infrastructure? And I brought this up years ago, SB 330, blah, 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 blah. There should be, at least I believe there are guardrails still. Maybe this project, you have to sign off on it. I don't know. I would think we have a choice, if only because if we didn't have a choice, you guys wouldn't be here, we wouldn't be here. It would have been rubber stamped. So may not like the choices, may not like the outcome of said choices, but I do believe we have a choice. And if there are ramifications and repercussions, well, as Council Member Mendoza said, it's we the people, not you the staff, not they the developers. It's we the people. And if we don't, I want to believe it's not too late. And I know lawyers have to do what lawyers have to do, but I don't think a question was actually answered as much as it was avoided. So maybe keep it simple and say, Madam City Attorney, what happens if we don't pass this? Real simple. Keep it monosyllable. What happens? Do we get sued? Does the state come in? Do we get put in timeout? See, I haven't heard the answers to that question. All I heard was respectfully disrespecting. So ask it real simple. What happens if that 70 feet needs to be measured officially and not by a Google map? What happens? It's either going to be something or nothing. And if it's the something, well, then what are those somethings? Sometimes I miss the ranting and raving, but I'm really trying not to do that. Thank you.
I have no additional speaker cards in person. I do have 2 hands raised in Zoom. I'll call on Jeremy. Jeremy, go ahead.
Thank you, appreciate it. I'm speaking tonight really just to express my strong disapproval and disappointment with this project. This space does not support this type of project, is not zoned for this type of project. Simply put, it's wrong, and the developer, I think, should be ashamed of themselves for exploiting this law that gives them the ability to do something like this when they know darn well a city planning commission and city council would never approve this under normal and sane conditions. As much as I'd like to see the council find a way to vote no on this, and I do agree with Council Member Mendoza that staff should have approached this better. I do realize the implications of fighting this, so I'm not expecting you to. Although I think if you did find a way, it would send the state quite a message. But that's neither here nor there. So with that, I'll just say this, and this is to everyone really listening to me now. Just please remember this in November when you vote. If the person or people on the ballot support projects like this and support taking away cities' abilities to decide what they can and cannot build, please don't vote for them. Thank you.
The next speaker is Cinziana. Cinziana, go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Ditto to what Jeremy just mentioned for upcoming elections in November and even in 2 years from now. Everything is recorded, is on video. Whomever supports this particular project and says yes and doesn't have the courage to really protect our city and their constituents who voted and trusted them to be there. We need to remember that, and I will make sure of it if I'm still here. What I would like to also say is that staff definitely fumbled this project again. I'm trying not to use the words I used before, but I'm sure everyone remembers, and I stand by what I said even before. But you all notice lack of concrete data, precision. They're not obsessed with being accurate and really giving you the data and complete information so you can make your decision. They lack project management skills. I do that day in and day out, and seriously, just because they cannot prioritize their work, that doesn't mean that the residents have to suffer. They need to be resident obsessed. They work for us, as Danny mentioned. They are paid out of our tax money. So shame on all of them for pure execution on this. I agree, and I understand, first of all, I understand streamlining, which I agree with, because I think if we get something in the pipeline, it needs to be reviewed right away, not slow walked, as some of the projects are conveniently slow walked. by the same staff you listen to day in and day out. So, but I don't think we should rubber stamp project as the staff recommends, as the city assistant city attorney who constantly is on the side of developers. There's no doubt in my mind. She protects developers. It's been proven over and over again by her attitude and how she never supports our council to make decisions for the residents. And again, in the report that you just heard, staff expressed a lot of what looks to be personal opinions, assumptions, a lot of data missing, and just think of a Swiss cheese piece that, you know, has holes all over it. I would like to bring your attention a little bit on, you know, staff agreeing and deeming a lot of the items presented as compliant. How does contemporary architectural style, just a little fact, simple as this, contemporary architectural style, that consists of multiple linear planes and flat roof matching, how is that matching surrounding areas? This place is surrounded by traditional farm architectural style. So please ask for a little bit of explanation, at least on that. And also, how can we allow 3-story buildings in an area where the height is not higher than 2 stories? Also, the retention area. Why do they think it's okay to leave it not landscaped, bare land? What happened with having high standards for our city and creating a pleasant environment for its residents? This is your opportunity as council member, as elected officials, to show you care and really protect our city from predatory practices dictated by state. What I would like to hear from each of you is what actions you took along the years to fight these housing bills on behalf of your constituents. Wine, dine, accepting campaign donations from developers, kissing babies, and ribbon cutting ceremonies do not count. So I hope you can present something concrete with impact for our community. Thank you.
The next speaker is Marisol. Marisol, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I wanted to say some of what the other speakers said. I want to understand this because as a resident, I'm a little taken back on why the council isn't able to talk about this and why, if there was such a quick timeline, why didn't it get to the council sooner? And so now you're basically saying the council has to approve it. It just seems so ridiculous. I really need an explanation of why our staff is doing this and why the council basically has no vote. Basically, they've taken away your vote on this matter or your ability to ask questions on staff on this matter. So I really hope that the 5 of you are going to drill staff and really it's a trickle down from the city manager. And I don't understand because I feel like our ability to do anything is already kind of taken away by these laws and bills that are put in by the state of California. And now our city council, our city staff, I'm sorry, has made it even worse when they shouldn't make it worse for us because they should give the ability for you 5 to be able to review this and give back. So can you please explain to the residents where the ball was dropped, and we need someone to be held accountable for what is happening tonight on this particular project. Thank you.
The next speaker is Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. As you know, I can't speak too much on a specific project, but I do want to speak not so much about how this project is being built or designed, but how it's affecting our community. I wasn't going to speak at all tonight on this, but hearing the callers, hearing the conversation between staff and the council, and hearing everything that's going on, I just want to point out that this is a consequence of things that are happening in the state, and it's a consequence of our community and communities all over California not really understanding and not really standing up for themselves against the state. We're going to just keep seeing more and more of this, and it's getting worse and worse. And these kind of projects where staff decides ministerially, it's in state code. The state requires that we do certain things that we don't want to do. The reason they're requiring them is because they know we don't want to do them. And frankly, they've resorted to name calling. If anyone in Brentwood thinks that maybe an apartment building doesn't quite go on that corner, well, you're not a reasonable person expressing an opinion. You're a NIMBY. So don't let anybody call you a NIMBY ever, because I assure you, it's not meant as a compliment. It is a vile insult to call anybody a NIMBY, and I'm getting really tired of it. And but what I do want to tell you is that if this is not what you want, if as city council members this is not what you want, you have to stand up and support movements like Our Neighborhood Voices. You have to stand up and speak out against the politicians that are doing this to you instead of supporting them from up there, which I've heard a couple of you do. And you know, you just can't go around glad-handing these people anymore. We've got to put a stop to it. And you represent the city of Brentwood. You represent the people of Brentwood. We have to be willing to get out of our comfort zones. We need to fight back on projects like this. We need to do what Council Member Mendoza is doing and look at these projects with a microscope. Find anything that gives us a fighting chance, not just sit there and listen to staff go on and just, you know, I mean, staff, I don't think, you know, anything, they're trying to be bad or anything. I just think that it's overwhelming and it's so hard and there's nothing they can do. So, you know, please support Our Neighborhood Voices. Please think about who you vote for. If you're not sure, please visit the Alliance websites, the Alliance on Facebook, Nextdoor, to find out who the politicians are that you might have on the ballot and where they stand on this. And I have some very disappointing news for a lot of people. Most of the politicians around here are against you and for the state in this matter. So again, I apologize for talking around the project, but I think that just taking the temperature of the public and what we're hearing tonight, and from what I've seen and what I saw down in Long Beach, and I think this is an issue, and I think any city council member that turns their back on this issue is not doing a good service to the city of Brentwood. Thank you.
I have no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Okay. At this time, we will close public comments. I know I have a request from Council Member Pierson to speak. Before we do, I do want to get some answers from our council. There have been some questions that I know that I had asked. I think that the questions are very fair. That were presented as in, why do we have to do this? What happens if we don't do this? Those are things that I know our council members have been in meetings. I've been in meetings just today. I met with one of the current assembly members that regarding this item, and it is very frustrating as a resident, not understanding exactly why we are in these situations and what we can do about them. So if you could just answer the why and what happens if we don't.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, This is the result of a state law, AB 2011, that was passed in 2022 and went into effect January of 2023. It does require ministerial approval, so that is just the objective application of standards that apply to the project. Staff doesn't necessarily take a position on whether they like or agree with it. It is simply staff's job to fulfill their duties. It being the case that we don't have another process laid out that would allow staff to bring ministerial approvals such as this to you, staff did fulfill that duty. The penalties for violating state housing laws can be quite severe, and as you know, have become more severe in the last few years in Sacramento's efforts to require cities to comply with these housing laws. And so if the city council wants to provide for another process tonight, that is on the agenda, and you're certainly welcome to discuss that. But in order to avoid severe penalties, it is necessary to process these within the very short timelines given.
Could you perhaps outline some of the actual severe penalties? I know that that seems a little ambiguous, but I have been in meetings in Sacramento, and it is very frustrating because on a resident level, it feels very much like we are being held hostage from the agenda of putting houses or high-density buildings anywhere that there is a foot of open space to do so. On a personal level, it's really frustrating. And so I'm sorry, if you could just answer that.
No, we completely understand that it is frustrating. So as you know, HCD, the California Department of Housing and Community Development, has an accountability and enforcement arm now that is specifically authorized to go after cities that they feel have violated state housing laws. There's a long list of potential penalties, each of which are associated with particular violations. So trying to go through all those tonight would be very difficult. In addition, Senator Scott Wiener, who you know has been very pro-housing, just in the past few days introduced a new bill, SB 1037, that would seek to impose a minimum penalty of $10,000 per month, not to exceed $50,000 per month for each violation of state housing laws by local jurisdictions who aren't following these new requirements. So staff is trying to be mindful of those potentially severe consequences.
Thank you. Councilmember Pierson.
Yeah, I was going to ask some of those questions about, I want to say, I hate AB 2011. I also don't like SB 6, SB 4. This one hits hard because it is right at the corner, so I intend to print our staff report and give it to my neighbors because I think it's going to be a big shocker for all of them driving home to see this cantankerous building that's 40 feet tall, sitting on a small corner. I'm also very concerned, it's a public safety concern as far as traffic. Right there at Lone Tree where that space is at, there is the merger right before the railroad tracks from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, then to 1. If you go in the opposite direction on Smith Lane, there's a school being built. We also have a development by a casino that's popping up on the opposite side of Lone Tree. And then we have an applicant coming back that I won't discuss, a casino coming back to do another development on Lone Tree. To say that this is going to get congested, it's going to be extremely congested. I am requesting traffic engineering studies for that area because I'm very concerned about the safety on that corner. The other thing that is concerning to me is, in addition to the height, in addition to the fact that it does not fit in our design in that corner, in that area of Brentwood. Well, anyway, let me go back. Saying that I hate these, the reason why is it completely takes control away from the people who elected us to make decisions. I understand the frustration of our council members. I am not upset with our staff. I thank Rob for his comments. And you know, I will call out staff when I think they've done something wrong very quickly, behind closed doors, and then in front of the public. So I have no fear in saying, hey, this could have been done better. Tonight, I do not feel that staff did anything wrong, and I'll tell you why. AB I'm sorry, not AB, but the AB 2011 is codified, and it's codified in section, and I'll make sure I say it, and I'm not here as legal advice, but I'm gonna give more details. It is codified in section, Government Code section 65912.114 subsection A, talks in more details about what the local government has to do when it gets an application. First and foremost, when there are less than 150 units being built, it has only 60 days, which was in the staff report, to go ahead and ministerially accept the process if it meets all of the requirements of the bill. In this situation, staff did review, and it ministerially, as stated, we don't have anything in place. It has to. And I'll tell you that it actually says, if we go to 65912, I'll go there, point 114 subsection 8, if the local government determines that a development submitted pursuant to this article is consistent with the objective planning standards specified in this article, it shall approve the development. I have said over and over again what shall means. Shall is an imperative command, mandatory and not permissive. So they've had 60 days to go ahead and go through all of the hoops. If anyone saw the staff report, if you look at the checklist, to check and see everything to see if, and it, as they stated in the report, it got sent back because it didn't meet the requirements. Once they meet the requirements, there is nothing we can do. So I agree with Rod. I agree that we need to go ahead and look at who we elect at our state levels, either get them out of there when elections come around, get new people in place, but you have people who sit in places that say they support housing and they do not. They make bills not taking you all in consideration. They make bills in consideration of their next election or in consideration of special interests that they have. In this situation, we have nothing. Tonight was not, even if they would have brought this to us 30 days ago, 60 days ago, we do not have discretion to say, ooh, we want to or we don't. This AB 2011 is so horrible. And I get the reasons why, but it even skips our CEQA. It skips CEQA. When you think about the essence of what CEQA is for, it's disgusting, and it skips it. So no, I'm not in support of it to some of the callers' answers, but I also sit here knowing that there is absolutely nothing that I can do but sit here, and just the only thing that I have the power to do is to let staff know, which is what they've requested. What do you want us to do when we get these? Well, I'm absolutely never going to say, oh, don't tell us anything about it, just pass them through. I also never want to sit here and act like I have a degree in planning, in community development. I have a law degree. I can talk the heck out of you. I am an amazing lawyer. Google me. I'm amazing. I've asked my clients, check me. I'm good as hell. So, but I am not going to sit here and act like I know with this gentleman who, I have to say, kudos for your first staff report. Amazing. And I'm sorry your staff report had to be something as horrible as AB 2011, but you did an amazing job tonight, sir. Not anything against you, but I don't want to sit here and go down the checklist to figure out what we've done. Now, what would I like? I would like staff to consistently bring this back to us. I would like to have and I would like to get it before the 60 days. I'd like to get it sooner. I understand that it's a small window because you all have to check the list, see if they meet the things, and it's a short time. And from what I hear when I've asked staff, what is this process like? It's a lot of work. But I would like to know if we could get it 30 days before the 60 days is up so we can see what you all have approved. And like Council Member Mendoza looked into some laws or looked into some things, and then we have the opportunity to ask you questions. I'd like to also hear the public weigh in, even though public, guess what? Some people in the state, when they passed this law, took away your rights. So you can stand here and talk, and guess what? They didn't care about what you feel or what you think. But that being said, I do not believe I want to take away from my position. Staff did nothing wrong. Staff did what they had to do with what they had. And I appreciate everything that they've done. And I understand that not only were their hands crossed, so were their legs. They're everything. They had no options. This law, in effect, took away all of our powers. I also want to say, be mindful of the fact that Rod was right.
I think I'm not trying to say, yes, come on, developers. We're going to see more of this. And I'll tell you where we're going to see it, PA1. You're going to see it in PA1 because anywhere is zone commercial, a developer can come do AB 2011. Check into it, look at it. And I agree, go ahead, our neighborhood voices. You hear, and Council Member Mendoza told you all this a year ago. She kept saying it back in, from 2022. This was signed in September of 2022. And she kept telling you guys, look, she kept saying, AB 2011, I heard her personally, and SB 6 is coming. Get ready. We're here now. But I don't want to blame staff. I want to make that abundantly clear because we go down the rabbit hole that staff slow walk, drop the ball. They have done it on other things. So I'm not here to say that they haven't, just like many of us have done things wrong in our careers. They've apologized or they fix it. But on this one, they did everything they were supposed to do.
I'm going to, sorry, real quick. I don't agree with you on that 100% because I've been here for 3 years. Staff knows we want to see these. And you're new, but staff knows exactly what we want to see, and they know we want to see this. Like, they had 60 days. They knew I was going to ask these questions. Tim and Katie know me. They knew I was going to ask questions like this. They knew I analyze everything. They could have come to me and said, hey, Jovita, this is coming up. Why don't you review it? Why don't you ask any questions? Because as soon as I got the agenda packet, I sent Alexis a question. So I disagree with you on that because if they didn't know me, I would agree with you. But we've been riding around this rodeo for a long time now with me, even before I was elected. So on that one, I am disappointed. I wish someone had come to me, 30 days ago, and we could have had this conversation then. And so I do feel like there was a failure in communication when it came to this project. And so that's how I feel sitting in my seat. I do feel like the ball was dropped. So, so again, to her point, there's ourneighborhoodvoices.com. We need to raise money to pass a constitutional amendment where the state can't tell us what to do anymore. As a council, we've passed a resolution supporting the initiative. So as a city, we already support it. Tim Grayson voted yes on this. So, I mean, Joel, I don't know if you met with him today, who you said you met with. I'm not sure, but you really need Tim. I mean, you're the closest one with the conversations. And I'd like to know what he says to you when you vent your frustrations, because I'm sitting here frustrated. Councilmember Pierson's frustrated, but you've been here the longest. And I really, I have expectations, and that you have our backs on this. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about what Grayson's vision is, because right now, vote for Marisol Rubio. Don't vote for Tim Grayson is my message right now, because he stabbed us all in the back, every single one of us.
Okay. Well, I will respond to that. I have met with Assemblyman Grayson. For the specific reason, he was co-author of some of these new bills coming out that are continuing to do what we're fighting against. And as you might expect, his reasoning is a pretty broad brush versus what local control is and what works for everyone. And so everyone I've spoken to in Sacramento, that's the real reality. And you have to, I know you have. And so we are all getting the same conversations and the same responses. And it's infuriating and it's frustrating. And it's frustrating not to be heard or even felt like you're being heard. I don't like being placated, and that's what I feel like happens every time we have conversations. So we do have to stick to this particular agenda item. Thank you for allowing us to have this side conversation. But I am very, very, very frustrated and angry, and I don't see the future changing a lot unless there's changes at the state level with who's making the decisions. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not going to talk a lot. There's been a lot said. A lot of it I'm in full support of. I don't want to take up everyone's time just by more of the same. What I would like to say, one of the comments was asking, why are we here? And I would have to agree, we're getting to the point of we'll be able to approve a street light or where a park goes, maybe if we're lucky, unless it's where a house might go instead. So it is very frustrating. It's very frustrating to think about our future and the future of any councils to be able to make any decisions that are actually for the betterment and the quality of life of the people they're serving. So my hope is that any media, quote unquote, outlets that are paying attention to this meeting, that you're very realistic in the way you report this, that you're very honest and you're very real, and you talk about the fact that your city council in Brentwood is pissed. We are pissed. Each one of us is going to Sacramento, is taking part in policy committees and department officer meetings and attending meetings where we can and making comments to make a statement about this. And we are all encouraging you to watch who you vote for. Scott Wiener seems to be the worst of the lot to me. That's my personal opinion. But pay attention, because that's the only way we're going to have any kind of say in this, is if we vote these people out that are only there for their deep pockets, for their special interests, for the developers that are paying them huge contributions. We need to vote people in at the state level that are actually willing to stand up. Glazer has been doing some of that. Senator Glazer's been doing some standing up and challenging things and questioning things, and, you know, gets kind of in trouble for it, if you will. But again, the media outlets, please look into the bills we're talking about in SB 9, SB 10, 423, 2011, so many of them, SB 330. Look at these bills and look at how they're coming down on us like some kind of a thunderstorm, taking away every right we have to protect all of you, and talk about it. I feel like the media is, again, it's sugarcoating. It's not telling the real story. And it really needs to, because this is how people learn about what they want to vote for and who they want to vote for, is by reading, social media posts, about reading newspapers and news stories. This is how the media holds a responsibility to educate. And I sincerely hope that they do that. My expectation for staff is that in every single minute possible way, you push back. You find any kind of possible loophole that you can ever find to protect our way of life. That you read, like, and you know that we're reading agendas too and trying to do like what Council Member Mendoza found, something that she was hoping was going to get us somewhere. I expect obviously the same thing from all of you. I hope that you're going to do the same thing. You're going to take the time. You're going to go line by line, word by word, to find anything that we can find to challenge legally where we stand. We don't want to have fines. We don't want to be cited. We don't want to lose our opportunity to apply for grants, but we are willing to stand, and we hope that you're willing to stand with us. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
As the Vice Mayor said, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time repeating what everybody has said. When I first initially saw this on the agenda, I was thinking there's no way we're putting an apartment building on O'Hara and Lone Tree. That's just not going to happen. I lived right across the street where I would have been looking at this thing, and I started reading the agenda, and I started digging in, and then I started making phone calls and trying to figure out how not to let this happen. And I found out I can't. And it's frustrating. And it's the frustration that all of you are feeling and are being directed towards us. And then all the frustration we're feeling and we're directing it towards staff. I think we're all directing it in the wrong way. It has to go to the state of California. It has to go well above us. We don't get to make the rules whether they put this apartment complex in. When I met with staff for agenda review, we talked about this not being approved twice before and being sent back. I'm assuming it's because you were measuring the streets, and I'm assuming it's because you were doing all of the nitpicky, grinding pieces of trying to figure out how to deny this project, and then they finally got it where it passes all our rules, or all the rules of the state. And that sucks, that we got to put up with that, that the citizens of Brentwood have to put up with that. And it's horrible that we're going to sit here and tell you, I know you elected me to be on your city council, but I can't stop this. I can't change it, no matter how bad I want to. So we feel your pain. We are right there with you. And I appreciate everything that our staff has done to deny this twice, push it past twice. but eventually they're just going to make it happen. So thank you for what you guys did.
So we have
So-
some,
I was going to say, so can we make a motion that all of these projects come to us within 30 days so that we can review it as well? All of them going forward?
You can certainly make that motion. You might want to talk, we have Planning Manager Eric Naldinius here tonight. We also have Miguel here, who might give you some idea of what it takes to get this information together to you in a way that you can review it. I don't know if it might require special meetings, but they might be able to just give some practical look at what that would mean.
if we have staff that could give some insight as to what that would mean, what that would take, and what is able to be done. If 30 days isn't, how soon can we get it, this information, if council would like to look at it?
The review process for AB 2011 project is, as the council member said, it could be pretty strenuous, and yeah, we certainly are nitpicking and looking at every single thing. This project was kicked back twice. You know, the last time it was only for 2 items. That in any other project we could have negotiated or something like that, you know. But with AB 2011, there is no negotiation. It's pass or fail. So if we were to bring this to City Council, we would look at all the objective design standards, all the objective requirements of AB 2011, go each item together, and look at it at a pass-fail criteria. You know, if it doesn't pass a single one of those, then it gets kicked back. There's no continuance. There's no come back with a different project. Every time I denied this project, it was the entire project. It wasn't a resubmittal or come back with better materials. It's you did not qualify. And they came back and we assigned it a new project number, and same process. So that's what would need to happen during a meeting if we were to look at this together. There's a lot of a nuance, a lot of standards to review, and but the key thing is that it's all objective. We can't have any subjectivity, and you know, I have to, as a planner, I have to get rid of that myself too. You know, I don't like linear buildings that are just a box, but I have no say in the matter. So that's kind of what it entails.
But I think it's the interpretation of those boxes. And I don't mean to go back to our original bridal gate, but we denied it on many points. None of those points were provided by staff. So there's times that we see things or residents see things that you might miss, because we're all human, right? So we all miss stuff. So I think at the council, as representatives of the people, we should get a chance. So I guess the question is, how many days in do you think we can do that? Because we should be able to look at it. And I know I'm not a planner, but there's a lot of people in the community, attorneys, real estate agents, they all provide feedback. So I might not be the expert, but there's times that other people provide feedback.
I think that the biggest problem with that, or not the biggest problem, but the biggest hurdle would be the lead time that it takes to get an item onto a council agenda. It's currently 5 weeks. So you know, a staff report has to be written and be prepared 5 weeks prior to the meeting, correct, Tim?
Yeah, thanks for raising that point. It's typically about 3 weeks lead time. So the staff, if they got it on day one of the 60 days they have to ministerially review it, would need to drop everything else they're working on, every other project that's more discretionary than this one. Again, it was intended to be ministerial, is drop everything and immediately start reviewing and assessing and starting to craft a staff report within a week. Within that week turnaround, we have a 3-week lag time where it gets through our agenda software management process. We have finance look at it for a few days for fiscal impacts. We have legal look at it for a few days. I have a few days to look at it, and we publish it, you know, 5 days before the council meeting. So it's a very tight time frame. I can't in any way see 30 days as even feasible. But within that 60 days, possibly. If you want to have staff have sufficient time to analyze it, I mean, we could ask Miguel and Eric how many hours they spent on just reviewing this project. And as you already noted, they kicked it back twice because they found where it wasn't compliant. But I would imagine dozens and dozens of hours. And if you were to try to assume that role, picture dozens of hours in a council meeting, and you get to do it once, because the law also says you don't get to continue it to try to chill it or freeze it or cause complications for it. So I don't know how it's feasible. We don't necessarily like this law either. It's very strenuous on our time frame. 60 days is tight for us, so let alone for you getting it in front of you in 3 to 4 weeks.
Could you put everything, so we have those project pages. Why can't you just put it online and we can go start reading it and I send you questions?
I guess
I would say it's online now.
But no, not all of the details.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
It's been online. Now that you have the criteria, you can certainly look at it anytime things are posted on the website. So if you want to start looking at it right away off an agenda, then that could speed up this process.
Okay, that is not true because not all the criteria is there, right? So
The criteria is here.
The entire project's not there. What I want to see is their checklist of what they're going through.
Who's there?
Staff.
We're looking at the laws checklist.
I understand.
Okay.
So they have a checklist. Can they put that online and just a live document as they're going through? So then whenever we can go in, we can look at it as well.
A real-time update of our checklist analysis?
As they're going through it, I mean,
I think at some point it could be put up online.
Because
I don't know
there has to be a
real-time.
way for us to be able to review it. And so I guess that's our task to you is you need to help us figure this out. Because it's the people that live in Brentwood, it's what they want, it's what they expect us to do.
And I'm a Brentwood resident too. I absolutely get that perspective, but we have to follow the state law.
I'm not telling
So
you
if we
not to
come up
follow
with,
state law.
if we come up with a process to have the council review it, I will probably have to push off dozens of other staff reports so you have sufficient time to review this. That's the consequence of this. It's going to push out other business. Everything funnels down to the city attorney and city manager before it gets on an agenda. So there's only so much capacity for all the other agenda items and business the city has to conduct as well.
Okay.
Is it possible, I guess I'm trying to find a workaround. I hear what staff is saying as far as timing. I like option number one, continue to have the staff complete the ministerial review, but I would like for us to be able to see it. If 30 days is not a realistic time, I think instead of us figuring it out, I'd like to find out what is a more realistic amount of time between, because a week before it's due, I think, is it due April 1st? The 60 days lapse time is what day?
March 9th.
It's already elapsed, the 60-day period. So we've already determined it's compliant. So there's no going back on that now.
So within the 60-day period, can we have 2 weeks before that instead of the 30 days before? I think just trying to figure out, instead of all of us going back and forth, I'd like to figure out if the 2 weeks is a more reasonable amount of time, 2 weeks before the process, clearly knowing that we're not here to do what we normally do and decide whether or not, it's just to look at what they ministerially reviewed, see if we see anything in the 2 weeks. I personally will say that I don't have a degree, I don't have the background that you all have, but if there's something that we can catch or something that the public catches, that we can ask questions with those last 2 weeks, I think it may give people a little comfort and space to know that they still had a say and a seat at the table that has been taken away from them. So if we transform it to 2 weeks would be 45 days. Would that give it time to get on the agenda, knowing that it will not?
Yeah, within the 60 days, much more manageable than within the 30 days for sure.
Could there also be as soon as it's online, some sort of a public notification? Even if it's just a social media post and an email to council? There's a new 2011 project on the website.
That can easily be done, yeah.
I think that
And
would
as
be
you
good.
saw, probably we put out a video to try to explain to the public how difficult this law is and try to really help people understand it better. So we've made a lot of attempts to try to help everybody understand it better.
And I have a question because, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, for the public notice, typically a project like this would be noticed to the nearby neighbors. This one did not have to be. So staff did the social media posts so that there would be some notice. And we discussed too, somehow letting the nearby neighbors know prior to when there's actual dirt being turned, because even though it's not required by the state, it's a responsibility that I think we have.
I've had a lot of my neighbors say, oh, if this comes, I'm moving. And it makes me sad because I have a great neighborhood. It'll be like a mass exodus. And And they start saying that when Bluebird was coming. They're like, I'm leaving. And it's sad because you got good people in Brentwood who will leave because of projects like this. I think what would be helpful, and I know that there have been efforts online, I would love if we can dedicate a workshop specific to discussing the effects of, and I think Danny Dorman hit the nail on the head when he said, tell us what the consequences are. And then Marisol said, help me understand. And I think these are all intelligent people who have come here and expressed their opinions on different topics. But the fact that they don't understand, sometimes we don't understand on it, it gets caught up in the weeds. I'd like it if we as a council could also have a workshop specific to AB 2011 and SB 6, just to explain. Residents can come, sit and listen to it, or it can be something that is recorded and going online. They can always click and watch it to understand. But I think it would be very helpful because the lack of information causes people to assume things. Lack of information causes people to create a situation in which they will begin to create a narrative because they don't know, right? And so it will look like constantly, if we don't inform people of what is really the issue, they'll begin to think that it is the city, that we're slow walk, or the council agree with these type of laws. So I'd love it if we can, among the five of us, make some type of determination, and this is not agendized, but I'd like to add it to the staff. In addition to us continue to have the staff complete the ministerial review and consideration of the AB 2011 project applications to provide the city council with a report at least, I'd say, 15 days before the 60-day period has lapsed. In addition, to provide a workshop, I would like an annual workshop on 2011 and SB 6 because.
But I think it's not,
it changes to the housing laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, each year. I think we need to have some type of, these are just the ones, but annually because they keep changing. And the things that take away, I think we should have some type of workshop to explain it. I think we owe it to the residents to give them that.
So it's almost like a legislative review, right? Like this is what's happened, and this is what's coming up on the docket that we should be prepared for.
And how it will directly impact you in your neighborhood.
Yeah, because you ain't seen nothing yet. I'm going to tell you all right now.
So with this conversation,
that was my motion to Ms.
I'll second that.
okay, let me ask staff for some input in the process to get this done.
I may have missed it, but I didn't catch it. Did your motion give direction on one of those three options?
It did. Would you like me to repeat it?
So within the 60 days, and you said with at least 42 weeks before?
15 days before.
15 days before the end of that 60-day period?
You want me to, I can repeat it. It'd be equal.
I think I heard it. I just wanted to make sure that that's option one then, right?
It's option one
Of
with
modified
the
version.
modification.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Thank you.
And I added the workshop component to it on legislative, so.
On this law? So on all 1,000 laws? I mean, what were you talking about?
That's
All
an agenda
land use
item, though.
laws?
That's a separate agenda item.
I would recommend as a separate agenda, and then be really clear about which laws you're hoping to have captured in that, and then we have to figure out resources and outside counsel to help interpret some of those laws and give more of a background. And then the more we prepare for that workshop, the less time we have for all the other items that are also just as pressing. So just want to keep that in mind.
Friendly amendment, though, could we add that it gets publicly noticed when there is a project?
Yes.
It's going to be added. Thank you.
And publicly noticed when? The day we get the application? Yeah, I think the day we get the application, if the clock starts for us, it should start for residents.
I would say within a few days, yeah. Because if we receive it and we haven't looked at it yet, and don't even know it's an AB 2011 project, it might take a few days. But once we are aware and that 60-day clock starts, and I don't know, Miguel, if you can clarify when that 60-day actually starts?
Once the project gets submitted, and once the project gets submitted. Actually, I had a clarifying question as well. I was wondering if I were to get an AB 2011 project, and just in my logging it in, I noticed that it's deemed incomplete for whatever reason, right? Let's say they don't meet the square footage of yada yada. Would you still want me to bring it to City Council to deem it incomplete, or would staff have the ability to deem it incomplete and kick it back and only bring those ones that staff hasn't found a reason to deny and bring it to the council so we could look at them together.
That's a wonderful question. I'll answer that. I think if you deem it incomplete, you've already done the task. And I think, as you stated, once it's deemed incomplete, you all send it out, and it's not as if they get to just correct the parts that are not. So if they resubmit and you're at the point where you're about to deem it complete and we're up against that 45 days, that's when I would like for us to get it.
Well, how many days do you think it takes to deem complete or incomplete? How long does that take you?
It kind of depends on workload, but it does take a while. I would say at least 2 weeks to
Okay, 2 weeks is fine. Yeah. And then I'm trying to think of how to best communicate this. And now we're going off, but we're talking about the communication. Like if I look at the project page, there's planning application submittal, in review, public meeting, approved, under construction, completed. Do we want to add something for ministerial, right? So, because it's not going to be any, if it's ministerial, I think it might be different. And I don't know if that's possible to add a ministerial drop down. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So just so that people know, because I think it's a different response, right, from residents than if it's just something that they can participate more in. So I'm not sure if that's something from a communication perspective that we can add. But even for me, like if I look at it and it's ministerial, then I don't have to go and ask you if it's ministerial or not. So how do we make it easier just to communicate it?
I believe you should be able to add a drop-down menu, but just the labeling of the project, O'Hara Apartments, AB 2011. That way, when somebody's looking at the project list, they focus on the AB 2011 and say, hey, I want to pay attention to this guy.
So ministerial under review and ministerial approved, or, just so that they know there's that different, just a way to communicate it easier,
Well, the fact that it's identified as a 2011 is by definition ministerial.
But you can't see that from the list, right? You can do the drop down, but you can't see that from the list that we have of projects. You have to click inside each project, and that takes a long time for a resident to click inside of each project.
Oh, council member, what I was saying is that when we label the project, when we assign it its name, instead of just saying O'Hara Apartments, say O'Hara Apartments, AB 2011.
Okay, yeah,
So
that would work. Or any other bill, that would be helpful, because in a few years, we're going to have SB 230 whatevers.
We're going to run out of numbers to assign these. They will. So with all of the amendments and the addendums, do I have a motion regarding this item?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Go ahead.
We've heard quite a few different suggestions. We want to make sure that we've got it all captured, and I think Katie's trying to write it all out. But I just want to make one quick comment. The website, there may be some limitations we need to spend some time looking into, so can't promise we can do it, but we'll look into it. But if it's just the title change, we can certainly do that. If it's with that graphic flow, that may take a little more time. And then the workshop, I think we'll do as a separate agenda item, so we can get some real clarity on what you're looking for and how long that's going to take to put together, so we can come back with some more information and fiscal impacts as well. And then Katie, once you're ready, we'll turn it over to you.
Margaret, would you be so kind as to share my screen, or Amanda? Oh, there we go. Let me make it a little bigger. And on that number one, go ahead.
Number 2, I would say within a reasonable number of working days of submission.
That's pretty subjective, though. Reasonable is.
It's determined by the department. He said, well.
Should we put wording in there as determined by the department versus because, it's. This is just a question, not a
Or it could
recommendation.
say, staff shall provide public notice of receipt of an AB 2011 project once it determines it is an AB 2011 project.
Maybe compliant, or do you want, I guess the question is, should we post it the day we get it, or should we post it after they review it all?
Your mic's off,
Sorry.
but I think what he said was the day they get it, they may not know it's AB
Yeah,
2011.
that's what I'm saying, so.
So it's once it's recognized, but Katie's about to push it back.
So we frequently, and I should let Miguel or Eric address this, but we frequently get applications from developers at the very end of the day, just to try to get that clock going, right? So that's why posting that notice on the day of receipt just might not be feasible. I mean, they might bring it at 4:55. Miguel, I don't know if you have any input as to what would be a reasonable number of days in which to provide this public notice. Perhaps it would help if the council would clarify, is the public notice you're looking for simply the posting of the application on the development page with a notation that it is an AB 2011 application?
And
Or
a
are you
social media, and a social media post.
Okay.
I mean, I thought that was great that you guys posted that this time.
I don't care, I'm not opposed to it.
Huh?
I want the social media post, but it does not have to be quite as extensive
Yeah,
as this one was,
not
just
as
for the sake of time and getting that out there.
Yeah.
So I think number 3 then takes care of one side of this, right? So the other side could just be staff shall provide a, social media posting of receipt.
It was, I think they said in addition to the website.
Right, so the website is still number 3.
But that doesn't say
Shall be
that doesn't say the
posted
time frame.
within,
I mean,
There
I
you
think
go.
there just might be differences between how quickly it can be loaded to the development project webpage and how quickly a social media post could be put together. I'm looking to staff for input there.
Typically, when we receive a project, any project, it's placed within a week of submittal onto the website, and that accounts for sometimes developers do submit them, 5:15 or 4:59 on Friday, and that will take account to the weekend or holidays, that type of stuff. And then the planners themselves are not the ones that actually put them online. We have the admin person do it. So it's kind of dependent on her timeline, but it's typically within the week of submittal and payment being processed.
So within 7 business days. Is
Yeah,
that
that's good.
okay?
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks.
that's reasonable. If I could just suggest a comment to your 45-day deadline to change it to within approximately 45 days, that gives us a little leeway. And let's say within that 4 days, we have to schedule a special city council meeting on a Friday night to meet the time frame. So just give us a little more flexibility, and then we can try to schedule on regular council meetings, unless you want to meet on a Saturday or something. So give us some flexibility there.
So if we put approximately, it should have a not to exceed date too.
Yeah.
If we can define approximately within 5 days of that, either way,
Then
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
We'll get it to you as soon as we can.
I'd say not to exceed, what's our not to exceed date?
Well, honestly, if it's day 55, 59, if you determine it's not complete, then there's no extra time needed
That
in
doesn't give
60
us
days
time
because
to
we have
review it
30
though.
more days.
That doesn't give time to review though. That's the problem. We get stuff on a Thursday. So if we got it the day before, doesn't give any time. That doesn't give the public time.
I would say if the 60 days was on the Wednesday, but you met on the Tuesday night, you determined through the criteria it's not compliant, then you don't need any extra time. We have 30 days to send them the letter after that anyway, so.
But this is you giving us the access, the time to go over it. So I would say mine would be, I hear you, but I don't like it. Respectfully. I would prefer us to do like a not to exceed 50 days. That gives us 5 days leeway. I think that gives us enough wiggle room. I don't know how anybody else feels, but pushing it.
I would have said not to exceed 45 days, but that's okay. Because like sometimes I go to people at the league and ask questions, and that's kind of, yeah, so.
So it gives a whole nother week.
Let me
Good
just ask a
time.
follow-up question. What are you thinking you need the extra 15 days for?
So I disagree with how you guys approved this. I don't think they met the criteria. I don't think we should have included the center divide. So had I said that, you could have sent that to outside counsel. We could have decided how we want to go about that, right? Because there's differing opinions, right? So that's what I want to do, like, no, I don't agree with this, and I don't agree with this, and then can you go research this for me, and so on and so on.
Okay. So just for the sake of the record, we did send this to outside counsel who agreed with the method of determining the width of the right-of-way. So we had
So they
outside counsel
specifically said
work on.
the center median is included. You have that in writing?
We asked her to determine whether or not staff's methodology was correct, and she said, yes, it looked fine. No, I do not know if she has any particular citation to point to for that. I'm just saying we did engage outside counsel
But
to ask this.
that's where we would have asked that. I would have asked that of an attorney specifically.
I understand. So I would like to ask with regard to number 1, I think you do still want a final report. Is that correct? So right now, staff has come to you after the decision has been made. Now you're asking that this decision come back to you for your participation. After the conclusion of that, do you want some sort of report on the consent calendar or something to just close the loop and say, this is the conclusion of this?
Yeah, but if we have any questions or concerns, that gives you time to go and research that and come back with our specific questions. We might not agree.
I get it. Can I say something real fast?
Yeah.
I guess when you say, what are we gonna do within, like Tim, you asked, within the 10 days, what do you need the extra time for? Let's say we get to the 50th day. There's this disagreement of, I agree, I don't think so. And staff and council is saying, we'd like some specific, go back to outside counsel, ask a question. That gives 10 days to do that. That's why I'm looking at the 10-day window. That's why I think it should be 10 days. So yes.
And that's where I
to
was
answer-
having an understanding that we don't get to continue this, so maybe legal can clarify that. I saw something in the law that says you can't chill it or kill it.
So
whatever.
not chill it, but if we determine that night that it's not, right? Then that gives you time to look at it if you wanted to talk about, anyway, I just would not like to wait to the time frame of which one is deciding to be the day before. It doesn't get, to me, it just seems risky. So I think the 10 days would be, to me, more amenable and makes more sense. In addition, I think bringing it back on consent would be better, but not on another agenda after we've already discussed it. That night is either going to be, hey, you're right. We think we don't have a decision and we don't have a dog in this fight, but we looked at what you did and we think it's great. Or we looked at what you did and please give us your arguments, which means we all as a council have to let staff know in advance of instead of waiting to the night, we have to give them our questions before, once we see it come out. We need to be sending it out to them to ask the questions, because if we don't get another bite at the apple, we're not gonna get a chance. They're not kicking the can is what Tim is saying, to come back again.
So in that case, it doesn't sound like a return to
Consent.
council is really necessary because you'll have taken your action and you'll know the
We'll
outcome.
take our action. If you wanted to loop back and close the loop for consent, that's fine, but we would have already taken our action. That's right. We've already taken it, so. And I say number 2, can we keep the same within 7 business days? I don't see the number 1 not to exceed 50 days. So adding the language, I think it's a nice meet in the middle of adding Tim's language of approximately 45 days, not to exceed 50 days. Thank you, Katie, for typing this all up. I was gonna try to sit back and remember what everybody said, and that would have been not fun. Thank you. That would be my motion.
And I will again second it.
Staff.
Question. So if you're deferring to staff to make the ministerial review and we bring it to you, are you looking for a resolution of approval then as the body determining that? Or are you just seconding staff's determination if you've deferred the ministerial review to us?
I'm going to kick it back to you and ask staff, what do you think would be the best thing for us to do? Because you all have a clearer understanding of AB 2011 and what would be the cleanest way for us as a city to meet our obligations.
So because this is a ministerial approval process, we don't have um, a mechanism for the city council to adopt a resolution finding something to be in compliance with or not in compliance with these objective standards. It's like a building permit, right? We don't have the city council adopt a resolution for the building permit. What happens with these applications is that staff or the decision maker does this compliance determination and then issues a letter to the applicant saying either you comply with all these things or here's what you don't comply with. So if we were to bring this back, within this 45 to 50 day window, and the city council made a determination that, you didn't comply with this particular objective standard, typically what would happen is we would take that input and factor it into the letter that went back to the applicant to notify them of their inconsistency.
Thank you, Katie. I prefer that process, and the reason why over the alternative is because I think it would be cleaner for us not to look like we're going through the other process of how we approve projects. So I don't know what the other, yeah.
So we have a first that is clear and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the item moves. Move into item G2. This next item is related to a modification of the Brentwood Municipal Code as it relates to pad-mounted transformers. And Vatsal Patel, our engineering manager, will present. Vatsal.
And while Vatsal is pulling up the presentation, well, it wasn't Miguel's first presentation. It is Vatsal's first tonight. So we're glad to welcome
Miguel, you
him.
did a good job, even though you've done this before.
So one of the newest engineering managers with the city.
Oops. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm here to present the item of interim urgency ordinance implementing a modification to the Brentwood Municipal Code permitting pad-mounted transformers within development projects. The reason why we're coming to you is there's a nationwide shortage of subsurface transformers that's affecting approximately 450 customers in northern and central California, and approximately 40% of those are within the Bay Area. The earliest that they have informed us that they would be available is January 2028, which obviously impacts a project's duration significantly. However, an alternative would be a pad-mounted transformer, which are currently available with a 6 to 9 month lead time after approval of plans from PG&E. The reason why this applies is the city section 16.121.20 that requires undergrounding of electric communication, street lighting, and advanced technology systems such as cable TV, telephone, to be undergrounded, as well as appurtenances such as subsurface transformers. And so there is a waiver, and how that affects us is that City Council does have the authority to waive a project, but it would be on an individual project basis. And so each project would have to come back if it met certain criteria. The criteria would be that there is topographical, soil, or other unusual circumstances. And so if this item is deferred, City Council may require an improvement agreement with the subsequent property owner to join an underground utility assessment district, a reimbursement district, or a similar improvement district. Now, this is for property owners in terms of developers, not individual property owners. The forming of this district guarantees the participation, and that no district needed at this time, as underground would be through property owners. To give you an example of an underground transformer, here's one within the city of Brentwood. As you can see that the transformer is in a vault that's underground. It's within that vault behind the back of the sidewalk covered by landscaped areas. The alternative, if it were to be a pad mounted transformer, you would see a small box above ground behind the back of sidewalk and within a landscaped area for a residential to the left and a commercial to the right, which is actually currently in the city of Brentwood. The pad mounted transformer for a residential is not. How this impacts current projects, here's a list of current projects that have received or a majority have received entitlement and have submitted construction plans for review. So we're not the only ones that are facing this shortage. Other cities have underground requirements, but most of the nearby cities do not, and therefore this exemption is not needed. There are 3 that do, and they also allow an exemption of allowing a pad-mounted transformer. What this means fiscally for the city, there's no fiscal impact resulting from the adoption of the urgency ordinance at this time. However, there would be future fiscal impacts, which includes about approximately 1.7 in engineering and inspection fees that would be delayed, as well as a delay of 1.6 million annual revenue from proposed commercial developments. There are other fiscal impacts, such as property tax and transient occupancy tax that would also be delayed if projects did not proceed. So what staff is recommending is modification to the code section, specifically items 4D, which would give the waiver still for an individual project basis, but it would also grant the developer to be responsible for installing screening to the satisfaction of the city engineer if there is a pad-mounted transformer installed. But then there's also item number 5, which is a new modification where the city engineer may waive undergrounding completely. Well, not completely, sorry. Would waive undergrounding requirements to the equipment appurtenant to underground facilities such as surface-mounted transformers, pedestal-mounted terminal boxes, meter cabinets, and ducts. Conduits, wiring, etc. But only, again, similar situation where if there's unusual topographical soil or other unusual problems, in this case, prolonged supply chain delays, which make it unreasonable or impractical. Similarly, the affected property owner or any utility company may submit information supporting this request for a waiver. In the event that it is granted, the developer shall also, again, be responsible for screening the pad-mounted transformer to the satisfaction of the city engineer. And we've also included a sunset date of December 31st, 2028 to allow coming back to council for updates or amendments. The screening options for pad-mounted transformers would be consistent with the PG&E guidelines for screening. So there would be landscaping, a retaining wall or planter wall, stones or other options that conceal it from public view. At this time, PG&E does not permit painting of transformers with decorative art, similar to our control cabinets for signals within the intersections. So in conclusion, staff is recommending that City Council adopt an interim or urgency ordinance and implement these modifications, allowing above ground or pad mounted transformers within developments. And that is all. I am here to answer any questions. I don't see PG&E or other developers here at this time, but I'm hoping that they are on Zoom.
I just have one quick question. Who's charged? So I don't know if you remember, Tim, there was that one gate that was rusted out on St. Andrews that had to go get taken care of, and they had called quite a few times and it had been rusted out. Do you remember that? Up St.
Is it
Andrews,
a city
Deer Ridge.
infrastructure, something
It was
with the
one of
gate?
the, it's like the in-ground one, not the above-ground ones. My only question is there any way we can put like a tag on it, like for maintenance, please call? Because this person said she got the runaround on just who to call for the maintenance. So whether it be this one or the in-ground ones, is that something we can put in there, a requirement, like if you need maintenance, this is who you call?
Should,
Oh, sorry.
that was an AT&T box, if I recall correctly. And we have records of all those. If the residents just give us a call, we can track that down pretty easily through the interactions that we have with those agencies. So I don't know if it's worth putting a number on, and I don't know that the utility companies would go for that. They're not going to want a bunch of our residents calling them. They're going to prefer that that gets streamlined through us.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. First of all, welcome to your first council presentation. That was great. My question is around the screening, because I had asked Tim about whether, for example, Planning Commission design review would happen if for some of these screening options. And he mentioned that PG&E standards were in place. But in the picture that you showed of the commercial property, that's not very attractive. That doesn't look like it's a screening at all.
So that is an older development prior to this. So any new development that would come in would be required to this new modification.
Commercial and residential.
Correct.
And then once something is above ground, there isn't a way to, once the supply and demand issues are over, then ask people to put them under.
There is a mechanism to do that. However, it is very costly, as it would require basically removing the existing infrastructure and replacing it completely, which again would be invasive.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And if I could just jump in and invite legal to make a clarification, this code is found in the Subdivision Map Act, that when there's a Subdivision Map Act map presented for approval, that's when they have to comply. When they come after that and don't require a map to be part of that approval, they don't have to comply. So this may be a project that came in even after the ordinance, but didn't have to comply with the code because of the timing of when it came through. So just a little nuance, but going forward, we're going to try to make sure that these all comply with the PG&E standards and guidelines.
Councilman Ordinance?
We have come up with a date of December of 2028. I'm assuming that's just a guess, an estimate?
Well, we heard back from PG&E that 2028 would be the earliest that subsurface transformers would be available to applicants or developers. And so we're allowing for some movement in shifting of dates so that it sunsets at the end of the year, allowing us to come back beforehand if needed.
Thank you, and great job, thanks.
Okay, are there any further clarifying questions of staff regarding this item? If not, we'll...
One quick one, this is all subject to the city engineer's review. So let's say the supply chain gets resolved in 2026 for some reason. He's going to continue to make sure they're undergrounded if the supply is available sooner than the date that you have in the ordinance. And if approved tonight, we'll be back in 45 days to extend it and or come back with a permanent ordinance to make it effective so we don't have to come back 10 and a half months later at the most. And more complicated process, but we can walk through that.
Can I ask a crazy question?
Sure.
Sorry. So like, I don't mind them in residential, in commercial. I really don't, because it's commercial. Can you have a commercial guideline and then a residential guideline and hold off on the residential guideline until they're ready? Can we have two different guidelines? Because they're kind of ugly. I'm just wondering.
You can certainly, through a future agenda item, request us to come up with new guidelines for transformers, but we're hoping that this is a temporary issue and we won't have too many of these come forward. But
Yeah, and just more immediately, if we were to stick to a process whereby it might not be possible for housing to be built because they could not get the subsurface transformer cabinet, then we would be vulnerable to a housing challenge that we were impeding the construction of housing by imposing these requirements that couldn't feasibly be met because of the nationwide shortage. So as a risk management issue, if you adopted a separate standard for residential as opposed to commercial, that would be the vulnerability.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll open public comments. Margaret?
At this time, the public present in the chambers and on Zoom are permitted to address the City Council on this item. If you're participating via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're in person, please file a speaker card. We'll take public comment from those in the chambers, then those participating via Zoom. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes and your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item or after the timer has expired. I have no speaker cards and I do have one hand raised. I'll call on Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Yeah, I don't like the way they look. And I get supply chain shortages. It's affecting a lot of industries. I think that if there's a sunset in here, it needs to be pretty strong. I think that we need to recertify that supply chain shortage that PG&E is telling us about fairly often. I, I don't know. I know the minds of my friends and people online pretty well. I don't think there's a lot of trust in PG&E. So what I would suggest is if we're going to do this and we're going to allow them to uglify our neighborhoods, then we should get something for it. Let's, take a page from the state book. If they're gonna need this, then get something else. Some kind of an amenity, some kind of tightening up someplace else. Uh, just something in there for us so that we're not just saying, oh, well, PG&E says we can't do it, so it's gonna have to be ugly. No, let's get something for it. Let's find a way to beyond the screens. Let's find a way to beautify these projects a little bit and get some benefit. They get the benefit of moving forward. They don't have to wait. It's not our fault that there's a supply chain shortage. So why should Brentwood just kind of take the hit and get nothing for it? I get, it's going to slow down income and it's going to make it hard for, if they can't get things built, the state's going to say we put something in their way. But if we get a little something for it, we're not putting something in their way. We're just asking for a little bit of a concession. So, think about what you can get. Don't always just think about what you can give. It's my 2 cents. It's how I negotiate anyway. Thanks a lot.
I have no additional hands raised.
Thank you. At this time, we'll close public comment, move into council discussion.
If I look at the pictures, one of them looks lower profile. Is there any way we can require the lower profile ones? Like the other one looks like it's taller. Can we have dimension max and mins for residential?
That would be dependent on the load and the service that they're providing. Certain, with residentials, there's about one pad-mounted transformer for about every 8 houses. So that's still they're smaller, but a commercial building would require a larger transformer.
But I'm looking at the Oakley versus San Ramon, like the San Ramon is nicer. No, it's not the same. It's the same.
Sorry, Vassal, it's not really the same. It's entirely dependent on the electrical load that serves those houses. So it depends on how many houses each transformer serves. We could get really in-depth and require so many transformers for so many houses, but you're going to make the law so convoluted, it's going to be difficult for Vassal and their staff to comply with it. So it's really just meant to be a temporary measure to get through the supply shortage. It's not meant for us to try to redesign it. We don't like these any more than you guys do.
Yeah.
It's just that those projects aren't going to move forward at all, and we will be open to some risk if we don't.
Yeah, but it's temporary for us, but permanent for the resident, right? So is there like, and I don't mean, I know it's like per house. Could we have the guideline of how many we think, like how, I mean, you're smart at this, but I just like, if you see a big ugly thing in front of someone's house, that kind of sucks. So can we say it might be more frequent down the street, but less profile?
Again, that all depends on the load, like Casey mentioned.
Yeah.
So depending on so yes, there's 2 things to this. One, the city doesn't really have authority over this because it is through the utility company.
Okay.
So PG&E prepares it based on their drawings and their load calculations. So we would have to kind of assume that it's loaded such that it's for a significant amount or a calculated amount.
Yeah, because I'm just, I don't know, I was just looking at the 2 pictures and I like the lower one better, so that's it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments regarding this, or do I have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion. As detailed in the staff report, I move to adopt the intra-emergency ordinance implementing a modification to the Brentwood Municipal Code, section 16.120.120, to allow the city engineer to approve pad-mounted transformers within development projects and finding of exemption from CEQA.
I will second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye. Aye.
It moves. I have been requested for a 5-minute recess, council. So at this time, we'll take a 5-minute recess. And thank you, Vatzel, for that presentation. Thank you. At this time, we will reconvene from recess. We'll move into item G3.
Excuse me, Mayor. Before we do that, I need to read the title of the ordinance. from
Yes.
the last item.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. An interim urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Brentwood amending Brentwood Municipal Code section 16.120.120 to authorize the city engineer to waive limited undergrounding utility requirements and finding the actions exempt from CEQA.
Thank you. Item G3 is a request from myself and Council Member Mendoza regarding resident engagement meetings and to potentially provide further direction from the City Council and Council Member Mendoza.
Yeah, this item's close to my heart. I love town halls. I love meeting with residents, but I think we need to define a little bit about the meetings because one of them was at Somerset and the public couldn't attend, and there was people that went to the kiosk and got turned around. The other thing is, I think we need to define like where they should be and what setting they should be. Well, you know, Tim had posted that he was going to do them at the farmer's market. My concern with that is one of the reasons that I had asked for these town halls to happen is because I want not only them to meet with Tim, but I want them to hear each other and learn how to advocate. Because some people are shy. They don't even know they can speak up. And I think what I saw happen when I saw the Somerset presentation is that people gained a little bit of courage from each other, and they weren't mean or anything, but they spoke up, and I thought that was really great. So I think, one, we probably shouldn't have them we shouldn't count these into our requirement of how many we need to have per year if they're not open to the public. They should be public meetings, and you can continue having Somerset or Trilogy. I know you used to have those before, but those should be separate. And number two, I think they should be in a place where people can get together and meet each other and hear each other's questions. So that was it. I just, I had suggested that to Tim, and Tim said it should come back as an agenda item so we could talk about it a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions regarding this of staff?
Actually, I do have a
Vice Mayor?
question. Is there a way for us to do one where a translator is available so that it can be accessible to Spanish-speaking residents?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to do that. But
We've done 6 so far, and I haven't seen any need thus far, but we haven't advertised it as such either.
exactly. And I think that would be the point, is it would be specifically advertised that way. Thank you.
I think if we're going to do that, we should advertise it as for other languages as well. And I'll tell you why. Just this weekend, just yesterday, I was approached by a Vietnamese resident who said she has some of the most complicated experiences because there is no translation. Well, there are translation services, but it's not as frequently offered as Spanish. And we have a larger population now of people of other ethnicities who are coming to our city. So I think maybe if we can have it somewhere where people can say, I'd like to, and here I go with reasonableness, ask for other translations or a translator there, I think it would be helpful. But I don't know how reasonable that is if you have your meeting.
How many languages, how many translators? That becomes much more cumbersome, I imagine, but
Yeah.
I still speak a little bit of Vietnamese, but maybe not
That's
enough to do a whole
perfect,
session.
Maybe we can do, everyone we can have rotating translators like this one. I mean, it's open to everyone, but this will have a Spanish translator. The next one will have, Tagalog. The next one will have Vietnamese. So they're always open, but we'll have, I don't know if the need is there. Like what?
No, I'll wait for discussion.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, then at this time, we'll open public comments. Margaret?
At this time, public present in the chambers and on Zoom are permitted to address the City Council. If you're in Zoom, raise your hand. If you're in person, file a speaker card. We'll take public comments from Zoom, or from the chambers first, then Zoom. Remarks limited to 5 minutes. Your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item after the timer has expired. And I have no speaker cards, and there's no hands raised in Zoom.
Okay, at this time, we will close public comments, move into council discussion. Councilmember
Pierson.
Pierson, thank you.
I actually like that it was done in the Somerset. I feel like being on the ad hoc committee for
age and age-friendly community, I think it provided, just by the numbers, accessibility to our city manager for a community that is the targeted population. I just wish we can make sure that before you have them, we just make sure there's accessibility. Because I'm sure there were people that tried to get in and couldn't, who are upset. But I don't want to discount that you had a meeting with 125 people and you're not actually meeting that mark of meeting with people. I also am not opposed to the farmer's market. I think the way, because I think it opens us up to a whole nother environment that may be thinking outside of the box to reach residents. The reason why is the first time I ever really had any interaction with city council, it was meeting Vice Mayor Meyer outside of the farmer's market. And she, even though she wasn't in my district, she sat and took the time to explain the whole districting to me and who was in my district. And she didn't say, oh, you should pay attention to this person. She was like, really invest in the democratic process. And I will always be grateful to her for that experience because it really made me feel comfortable here to go ahead and be a process. But it happened at a farmer's market. Marsh Creek Dems are always on a corner at a farmer's market, and it gives the opportunity to sit and have a conversation and a dialogue. So I'm not opposed to a farmer's market. I think what I would say is that it not be moving around a farmer's market. Like, hey, I'm standing in front of MJ's and then where's Tim at? And I doubt you would do that. I think it may be helpful if it's going to happen at a farmer's market, that there's a place where people know you'll have a table set up. And I'd also be concerned for our differently abled community if they need a place to sit to talk to you about not being able to stand. So I think about those type of things. So maybe it could be in the park during the farmer's market over here in City Park, if we're talking about that specific area. But I think wherever we do it, we should just take in consideration accessibility. And when I say accessibility, I think about mobility for people who are wheelchair bound, people who may have walkers, and also people who may, like me, I can't stand for a long period of time. So I probably wouldn't stay at your talks with him if your town halls, if I had to stand the whole entire time. I would actually probably sit on the ground before I, or leave. Other than that, I think I've witnessed you have informal talks. I've brought these up in other settings, but at the National Night Out, Tim, I was really feel blessed and fortunate to have Tim be on the team that I walked around with. And people were very comfortable talking to Tim. Residents came literally out of their house and they, I saw maybe about 10, 15 residents gather around Tim. They didn't care about me being there. They wanted to ask the city manager questions specifically about different things that they had heard on council or questions they had. And Tim was very responsive to them. So I think that if we open it up to other avenues, we'll get responsiveness to people. And I'll tell you another thing. When we keep them just on either Zoom or just here or in a very setting, we'll get some of the same people that show up. And I think it may intimidate people who normally don't speak. So I would like to have it in some diverse settings to open up the door for people who are not as open to speaking in public as we probably are. And I like the idea of translation. I like the idea. I'd like to see us go off the beaten path. I'd like to see you come over to District 2, come in the primary Latino neighborhoods and have a translator there and have chats with Tim or town hall with Tim in those neighborhoods, as well as the Somerset. I'd like to see as much over there and have it really be beefed up that there will be a translator, because I think if people know that, then they will be more amenable to coming out. But I do want us to take into consideration some type of avenue that if it's posted and someone says, hey, I'm going to be there and I speak to, I'm primarily Tagalog, and I think my issues are just as important as anybody else's, that we take those serious.
Councilman Ortman.
I couldn't agree more. When we originally put this into the evaluation process, we were talking about getting you out to meet the public and answer questions, and I think you're doing that. I think the feedback that we've already received from the town hall meetings you've already done has already done all of the expectations I had of it. Going to farmers market and meeting with completely different people now, opening up that environment to a different group of people, moving them all around the city. It is unfortunate that somebody was unable to get into one of the meetings. They're supposed to be public meetings. Maybe something we couldn't control, but I think this is exactly what I was thinking of when this was put together. So appreciate everything you've done and keep using your vast brain to spread out all over the city. And I think farmers market's a great idea.
It just, yeah, I agree. When I said farmer's market, it's not don't go to the farmer's market, it was the walking around. That is the way I saw it. So I think it's a great idea to set up at the park and have just a place where people know they can go. I do think we do need some more in District 2 and District 3 and District 1. Some suggestions for free space would be Straw Hat Pizza has free space up in District 1. I think Azúcar would open up their space to you, which also would be a lot of the Spanish speakers in District 2. Mountain Mike's on Balfour over by Willie's in District 3. Those all have spaces that I'm sure they would welcome you in. But I do agree that, and it's not that I didn't like them, Somerset. I love Somerset people and Trilogy people. I mean, we could have stayed for hours when we went the other day at Trilogy. But I want it to be open to the public. So I don't know if it's us paying for space, which I think is worth it. Like if we have to pay for the space at Somerset to welcome people in, I do think it's worth it. But so that was my thing there. It's not that we don't have it at Somerset. I think it's important. Just let's make sure that no one feels left out and no one feels that anyone is better than they are because they don't live in a certain community. But yeah, that was my feedback on that.
Okay, do I have a motion on this item then?
Yeah, I can make a motion that we continue with the fantastic meetings with Tim's, or talks with Tim, that they all be accessible to everyone in the city, that we need to make translators available when possible. So if we could figure that out and notice that out as well, so people know that there'll be translators. They are to be in one place where people know, so we can do that. And make sure that they are accessible to people with mobility and wheelchair requirements. Anything else?
I'll second that.
Okay.
So we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the item moves. Move item G4. Our next item is a request from Vice Mayor Meyer and Council Member Pierson. Vice Mayor Meyer and Council Member Pierson.
Oh, okay, so as you all know, Vice Mayor Meyer and I are both on two spectacular committees, fireworks going off in here, boom, 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 boom. The Age-Friendly Communities and the Race and Equity Committee. And we love the work that we're doing, but we think we can cast a larger net and reach other groups that may be included in this, but are being left out by our naming convention. So we are making a request tonight that we just only change the naming convention of the Age-Friendly Communities Committee and the Race and Equity Committee. We would, like to change the Race and Equity Committee to the DEBI Committee, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, because there are some, yeah, there you go, thank you. Debbie, DEB, Diversity, Equity, Belonging, and Inclusion. Thank you, Debbie, DEBI. We would like that. It adds the component of, besides just racial equity, it adds other equity, so, and belonging and inclusion. And then the Age-Friendly Communities Committee, we would like the Age-Friendly and Disabilities, Age-Friendly Communities.
Age and Disabilities Friendly Community.
Thank you, Age and Disabilities.
Again, I'm sorry about my voice being a little funky, but the idea for that one is that it's not supposed to be a way for us to get an age-friendly city designation from ARPA or the Department of Aging or whatever. It's specifically supposed to be about access. And so we would like to include aging and disabilities, because both of those populations are very specific to access, and that's what we're looking to improve within the city.
And that is our ask.
Okay, any questions regarding this request? Okay, at this time we'll open public comments. Margaret.
At this time, those present in the chambers and on Zoom are permitted to address the city council on this agenda item. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're in person, please file a speaker card. We'll take public comment from those participating in the chambers, then those via Zoom. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes. Your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item or after the timer has expired. And there's no hands raised, and I have no speaker cards.
Okay, at this time, we'll close public comments, move into council discussion, or do I have a motion?
I think it's fantastic.
I'd like to make a motion that council approve the name change of the following committee: the Age Friendly Communities Committee to the Age and Disability Friendly Communities Committee, and make the change of the name from the Racial Equity Committee to the Diversity, Equity, Belonging, and Inclusion, short Debbie Committee.
Just with one very minor correction, disabilities plural.
Oh, disabilities, thank you.
Yeah. And I will second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. We will move into item H. If you have a new agenda item request,
This was probably pretty easy. Tim has brought up, I think, 3 times now about a sales tax. So I think that what I'd like to see is a report of why we need a sales tax, what the money would be used for, and what the impact would be to the average resident. Because I think, I know it's come up a few times, so I just rather, let's talk about it. Let's see if it's something we are on board with or not. And if we're not, then we can just squash that ongoing.
I would like to make a future agenda item request that we amend our meeting rules and procedures, section 1110-1, subsection 4.3, to move our informational reports to the end of the council meeting versus being at the beginning. That's my first future agenda item request. I have a second future agenda item request. My second agenda item request is that, we talked about it earlier. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It was not yours, it's mine. Thank you so much. She didn't know I was gonna say this future agenda item request. No, I'd like to make a future agenda item request that we have some type of annual legislative briefing for the public, or that it be something that's recorded and forward-facing and updated. And specifically, because Tim is giving me the look that our city attorney sometimes gives us when she grabs the mic. Specifically, updates that will affect us at a city level as it pertains to housing legislation, in which council and residents lose the power to make decisions. So whenever we have a ministerial process. Oh, no.
So we currently have council direction to work on a workshop based on housing legislation that's approved in 2023. I know Alexis and her staff are currently working on one, including procuring a consultant who's maybe already done a webinar of sorts, because they're concerned that staff wouldn't be able to answer all the questions without outside counsel's assistance. And there are 200, 300 plus laws every year, so we're concerned the length of such a workshop would be overwhelming for most residents. And having it pre-recorded would work best, then residents can watch at their leisure as well as skip around to the parts that they really want to see. So that's what we're envisioning already from prior council direction. So if direction tonight is to continue that, we can certainly incorporate it into that. And if you're looking at housing legislation, are you looking at just the newest laws of 2023, 2024? Or are you looking at how far back?
I would say,
So some
starting from
context there.
2023, because you already have council direction, but I want this in perpetuities to be something that happens annually, and that if it has to be a recording, I think if that's gonna be the easiest way, that's fine, just so that we can point people who have questions that they can go review it and watch it.
Absolutely. And need to watch it maybe multiple times to really understand it. So that might be convenient for the residents.
Mhm.
Great.
I'm not allowed to say anything about that, right? Not until it comes back when I'm going to forget. I'm going to forget. That's my problem.
okay, if there are no,
I would suggest if you want to make a new one, and if it's similar enough, we can find a way to merge it and have it work together.
Okay. I would like to request that in the event we do a town hall recording webinar format for new housing legislation, that when it is posted on YouTube channels or wherever else it's posted, it is divided and time-stamped for each bill number.
Yes, that can easily be done. And if I could just say we can do that without a future agenda item if that works, because that's what we were planning to do. Should I make it easy for the residents to jump around to the ones that are most applicable and relevant? So it's okay if we just integrate that instead of having that come back?
100%.
Perfect.
Okay, with that, we will move into item I.1. Councilmember Pierson, a request related to potential updates to the Brentwood Municipal Code and the potential creation of a council committee. Councilmember Pierson.
I, as you all are aware, am freakishly obsessed with the fact that by the time I leave here, as much of the municipal code that we can update, that will make me a very happy creature. So last week we came, 2 weeks ago, we talked about making modifications and updates that were necessary because they didn't make sense. And so I would like for us to continue to look at it. My specific ask was for us to first start looking at certain sections, and there are things that I think we can do without this coming back before council, or like, for example, I talked about language that was not gender specific, but non-binary language, like instead of his or hers. And I think that's something that can be cleaned up fairly easy. But there are other sections of the municipal code that is just not consistent with current law or not consistent with other sections because of the time of the amendment. So my recommendation is that we do updates, and I would ask that we create a council committee, not an ad hoc, but a standing committee. And I would ask for us to meet, that committee meets twice a year, and I'll tell you why. I don't think that staff will have the time to just start amending sections. I'd like the committee to make a recommendation about what sections is more pressing or more hot for staff to begin to work on. Give staff the time to work on it. Staff can come back in 6 months and say, oh, we worked on Title I, and we feel like we need another 4 months. And then it can come back within 6 months again. I would like that, but honestly, if a staff member, for example, if it was Title 16 and they say, you know what, we need a whole year, then it can come to the committee and the committee can look at it and say, okay, let's go ahead and give another year to go ahead and review, but where are you with this? What has been amended? So we can go ahead and pass some sections of it. I know realistically, this will go out beyond a lot of our duration on this council and other council members. But I think without doing anything, then it just comes up if it comes up. If it comes up in the course of this happened and now we found it's not consistent. And I think we need to start looking at the municipal code and doing municipal code updates regularly and consistently. So I think creating a committee will help us get to that point. So that's my recommendation. That's my ask tonight.
Okay, any clarification from the council member? If not, at this time, we'll open public comments.
At this time, the public present in the chambers and on Zoom are permitted to address the city council on this agenda item. If you're in Zoom, raise your hand. If you're in person, please file a speaker card. Your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item or after the timer has expired, and we've received no written public comments on this item. I do have one hand raised. I'll call on Rod.
Thanks,
Rod, go
Margaret.
ahead.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. Yeah, about this, I would like to propose putting 1 or 2 planning commissioners on this committee as well. The reason being is we find ourselves sometimes sending things across to the city. We'll suggest an agenda item, then we'll discuss an agenda item, and then discuss sending over to the city matters. And something that I've proposed recently is a municipal code matter that I'll be discussing with my fellow planning commissioners in an upcoming meeting. And I think this would be, like LUD, I think it's another area where planning commission and city council would benefit from having that kind of cross-pollination of ideas, because the planning commission, whoever is on it, they're looking in municipal code a bit as well, just around planning issues, but that is substantial portion of the municipal code. So it's just a suggestion I thought I'd throw out there. If you threw a planning commissioner or two on that committee, it might not be a bad idea. Thanks.
I have no additional hands raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment, move into council discussion.
And just to clarify, as a standing committee, I agree. I think I would request that it be 2 council members, and just like LUD, we have an advisory, someone from planning. So I think it would be great to emulate what LUD is, but not come back regularly and consistently, because realistically, it would be too much of an ask with all the other projects the staff has to work on to say, let's meet monthly. That's why my ask is every 6 months or annually.
I think it's a great idea. The one that pops to my head is the park acreage allocation, how it went from being tiered to just being one. I think it's a great idea that we can go back and decide how we want to do it. Do we want to use the middle average? Like all of those kind of things I think would be helpful. I think it's something we're going to have to update constantly though, because of the state laws. I mean, it's a moving target constantly, but I think it's a good idea. That way, and it's good for the public because it's a clean we need a clean document for them too.
I support the idea, but I don't have the capacity to be on the committee.
Okay,
So
Councilman, yes.
when you initially started talking about this and reading through the municipal code, and there was no way my brain doesn't work that way. But having it a once a year and more advisory, let's look at how this could work. I think it's a great idea, and it kind of forces the ball to keep rolling as opposed to just waiting for it to happen. So thank you.
Do you envision this being us looking through things that we think need updated, or staff looking through things that need updated? Or like do you want us to read and strike out and highlight, or how do you envision that?
So my vision was that it would come to the staff with, just like on LUD, how they give us the thing and we can look it over. But I think I personally last week had a whole bunch of sections just that I went through, but my expectation is that you may not always have a lawyer on or someone who understands it on council. So I would actually expect staff in their individual departments. And also, to be honest with you, some of them I can look at, but if we go to certain sections, I have no freaking clue, even though I am a lawyer, because I'm not in public works or I'm not in community development. So I'm gonna get lost on Title 17 and Title 16. But some of the other ones are easier for me. So I would envision that it would come back like LUD, and then we can look it over and we can make recommendations, and then it would come back to council.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Sure, thank you. I make the motion that we create I have to keep looking at it, that we create a committee. I don't know the name of that committee. The Brentwood Municipal Code Review Committee. And before I make that motion, did anyone have any qualms about whether it be 6 months or annually? Anybody have any concerns?
I think if we wait annually, it's going to be the same as it just spaces it out too far.
Okay.
Twice a year.
Thank you. So then I'll make the motion that we develop a committee entitled the Brentwood Municipal Code Review Committee of the City Council, that committee meet biannually to review after a report has been given by staff on updates. That committee can be the recommending body to recommend what sections we begin to work on or we don't work on. And also I would request that committee be composed of 2 council members who have voting rights and 1 advisory member from the Planning Commission.
I'll second that. Oh.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Clarification.
Yes.
Councilmember Pierson, would you consider allowing staff to set special meetings as needed to bring back items that had been discussed by the committee?
Yes, thank you. And I'll explain that the reason why that came up. If the committee, let's say in 6 months, committee reviewed it, but staff had the opportunity to update and can come back, then I would ask that they have the right to call for a special meeting
that the committee can meet on. That way, we can bring stuff to council sooner instead of waiting for another 6 months. So yes, I would make that amendment.
And one more suggestion, I didn't hear you explicitly say standing committee, which means it's ongoing
Yep.
indefinitely. And then with that comes setting a specific date and time. So if you want to give that some consideration to give us now, or when we bring this back for approval and appointing the 2 members to that committee, we
I'd
could
like to
leave it
wait till
open.
we appoint the 2 members of the
Perfect.
committee. Mhm. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll move into item I2, consider a request from Vice Mayor Meyer to consider potential methods to restrict hate speech during public comments. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. It's probably not going to surprise anybody that eventually my goal is to get us back into public comments on Zoom. But to get there, I feel like we would need to have some things in place that are a little bit more protective. And so one of the things that I heard about, the city of Emeryville passed a resolution in April 2023. I asked Tim, sent Tim an article and asked if he could look into it, and he said, no, it needs to be an agenda item. So this is an agenda item for the sake of us all being able to talk about this and find out if it's everyone's priority. But Lafayette issues a statement now. They developed a statement. I'm going to go ahead and read what theirs says. For this meeting, all public comments under this agenda item, public comments must be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. All public comments under other agenda items must relate to that agenda item. If this directive is ignored following a warning by the city clerk will mute the speaker. And then Emeryville's was a little bit more specific about prohibition of public commenters using threatening, profane, or abuse language that disrupts the orderly conduct of meetings. This is all to say that I think we could be doing a little bit more to respond to hate speech. And I think like what my goal is here is, like I said, eventually to get us back into public comments, but some other methods to do this. I believe Walnut Creek has a new policy out as well, and I understand we need to protect free speech, but I just feel like this is something we could be looking into a little bit more deeply. The policy I would like to see would give council the authority to cut off speakers who veer away from sharing opinions on city operations or social issues to make abusive, harassing remarks. And I think we see that even when it's an agenda public comment on Zoom, someone could still come in and make a nasty comment. And so the idea is we would be able to prevent that as well. We'd be able to cut that off a little bit more easily than we can currently. I know there was some questions at one point about whether it's possible to have people register with their email address. And so that way we would be able to cut that person's email address off. Now, I don't know if that's feasible, but I know like when I signed into the meeting tonight, I was asked for my email address then. When I watched Love the other night, I was asked for my email address then. So I just feel like, again, I think there are some things we could be doing differently to be a little bit more proactive in this area and protect us against hate speech a little bit more than we're currently doing. Whether it's public comment general, or whether it's comments that are related to an agenda item, and in person or on Zoom.
We'll open public comments at this time.
This time, the public present in the chambers and on Zoom are permitted to address the city council. If you're participating in Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're in person, please file a speaker card. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes. Your microphone will be muted if you speak on items that do not pertain to this agenda item or after the timer is expired. I have no speaker cards. I have one hand raised in Zoom. I'll call on Rod. Rod, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Of course, I'm going to speak on this. I kind of always do when I get the chance. I believe very strongly in public comment, and I don't want to bore you guys with it again. So I'm just going to say I strongly support what Vice Mayor Meyer is saying here. I do believe there is language that could protect the open public comment section at the beginning that is legally sound, based on the fact that it's no business of this city to try and do anything about anybody that wants to hate on any particular group just because the city cannot. The city is legally constrained from doing anything like that by basic civil rights laws and, human decency. But civil rights laws preclude any action on those kinds of statements, so they're not relevant to city business. And of course, anything that is considered threatening or harassing is not anything to do with city business. So I do think that there is a legal basis for that, and I do think people are exploring it. The other thing that I would suggest, I think I've suggested it before, is that Zoom participants be required to register with Zoom, not with the city, with Zoom. And in doing that, they can log into Zoom and into our webinars, and we don't really know who they are. We can't identify them. But what we can do is submit a report to Zoom of behavior that we think might be in violation of Zoom's policies. And there is case law. I quoted it here before. I don't have it with me tonight. But there is a case where it was fairly well established that a municipality or a county can use a platform that is an available platform to access the internet and to do things, and public can be required to conform to the platform owner's code of conduct beyond, even if they're uttering protected hate speech, which as an American, I hate the concept, but there is such a thing as protected hate speech. Still, they're violating the platform's rules of conduct, and the platform can opt to not have them back. And I think, sure, an account can be, a new account could be respawned by going out and getting another email and setting up another account. But these people, they're not real interested in putting a lot of effort. And, basically, if we did that, it would be having a lock on your mailbox, which I do. My lock on my mailbox, not going to keep anybody from breaking in with a crowbar, but what it is going to do is keep the people that go by and just flip open mailboxes. They'll just walk past mine and go to another easier one. And I think the city of Brentwood should be like that. We should just put a little lock on our mailbox and ask people to register for Zoom and log in. And Zoom, you can set up so that a person has to be registered to attend a meeting. I think it's just a simple thing we can do to help put a lid on this stuff. And again, I think public comments are so important. I think we heard some really good public comment here tonight on an earlier issue from many members of the community that I think really helped move the conversation forward. So yeah, I strongly believe in public comment. I support Vice Mayor Meyer in this. And I hope you'll consider registering people for having people register for Zoom before they make remote public comments. Thank you.
I have no additional speakers.
Okay, at this time, we'll close public comment, move into council discussion.
Could I just add something to, one of the things I wanted to mention, I know Margaret is very cognizant of not reading aloud some of the names that we're seeing, because some people sign on with a fake name that has some sort of meaning, whether it's racist or hateful, whatever it is. And I think, I don't know if that needs to be policy, but I thought if it does, should it be included into something here? Like if there's an unknown name, that you use the first name only, or that you use the first name and last initial, or is that up to discretion of the city clerk, which I know it has been something we've been able to do, but is it better to have that solidified?
Legally, they don't have to give their name at all. Right?
Yes, but they want us to read it out loud.
Can we say, look at your screen, if you're unmuted, you're next?
Works for me. And again, this is about accessibility. It's something I'm maybe a little obsessed with it, I don't know, but it's something I'm seeing, because also a lot of cities are just cutting off comments altogether. I will never, ever support that. I might be in a minority someday at some point. I certainly hope I'm not, but I won't support that. I think the public having access via Zoom, we've talked about the reasons for this over and over and over again. And I believe that we all concur, this is for the people that are commuting, young children, can't drive at night, elderly, someone who's, housebound, whatever it is. Like this is all about accessibility. Thanks.
Councilmember Pierson?
So, yes, some hate speech is protected and not all speech has the ability to be free speech. And I'd like to I don't know what your request is, but I'd like to say that maybe we should give staff time and attention and money to researching what we can and cannot say. And I'll say this, I sent off stuff and brought this up when we discussed this the first time and the second time. And I think there was a third time. And one of the things that I keep seeing is, one, open and close public comments with a statement of our values. And I keep asking for a diversity statement and whatever. Because then in there, we can say what our values are as a city. Warn and then remove the speakers using threatening language, disrupting the meeting is already, what Emeryville is still in their statement is actually Brown Act. They're taking a portion of the Brown Act and actually reading it. What I hear a potential part of the ask is that we just need to be more verbal and we need to say what the law is, because all of the things that both Lafayette and Emeryville are doing, they're saying it's not like they came up with a magical policy. They just are stating what the law is. And I think one thing we're failing is we are in the normal course of our being. And I think what we can probably do better is it'll add more time. But I think if it can, is to say what we need to say at the very beginning before public comments. And I think it may be helpful. I know there was I wanted to ask, have we ever considered some of these companies like Civic Bill? I think the guy came before and came and did public comment. I hadn't heard about anything back. I think one of their suggestions was like, if they have a system in place, but they look at cell phones and they can look at, there's some kind of way, because what happened was people were using voice over IPs and other mechanisms to get more than one voice. So it took away from the like one person, like one voice, one word, and it made multiples. Because that first day, it was like almost like they were all from the same place, which defeats our whole purpose of our process, right? The register for email addresses, I understand that, but we cannot in perpetuities, just once they do one violation, cut them off, because they get to come back each time and redeem themselves and have their public comment. So I don't really see, I hear it, but I don't really see what difference that's gonna make. Is, oh, you have a registered email. So we can send you something afterwards? I mean, we can just cut them off in public comment based on what the law says we can. And then sometimes we cannot cut them off. And I think that's why we're where we're at today. Would I like for us to get back to public comment on Zoom? Yes, because I think it provides accessibility to people. I just don't know the right way to do it. And so maybe if we start off, because we're gonna bring this back again to see what, okay, now so much time has passed, but maybe if we make it our policies and our procedures to start giving the admonishment now, then maybe when we get to that point, it'll be already something that's ingrained in everybody who gets on that call. Because there's some other stuff on here that I've seen in other meetings. I've seen, people can do it. I've seen some intimidation of staff come on here by the public. I've seen people make nasty comments, and we have to sit here and take it. We can't stop those things. And that's the same thing with the hate speech. They have to sit there and we have to listen to it. So I'd like for us to tell what are our freaking values as a city, irregardless of the hate speech. But how do we want council members to be treated? How do we want staff to be treated? I mean, we can't stop people from doing it, but we can tell what, as a city in Brentwood, we keep saying we're better in Brentwood. Let's show it. Let's talk about what our values are.
All of that, everything. Yeah, I'll take Zoom comments all the time. Again, we live in Brentwood and we welcomed seniors by having large senior communities, and I think it's a disservice to them when we don't offer it. I also think it's a disservice to parents who are busy with their kids. I mean, you all have kids. I did not start getting involved in city council meetings until my kids were older, because you're busy doing stuff with your kids, right? Like, you just can't. So, I do hear about the moms who now can hop on and get on. So I think it's moms and dads who can hop on. So my question about the Zoom is, I know that as a host, you have the ability to see the emails, like the email address. Go ahead.
I can't see the emails until the next day when I run a report. So real time, I cannot see the email addresses of those that are logged in.
Okay, so there's no way to run a report in real time?
No.
Okay, because I was trying to see if there's.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I can double check on that, but I don't believe so.
And if we did have the information,
Yeah.
what would you be asking us to do?
Well, that's what we were saying is like, if they're like Rod was saying, if they're violating the rules of Zoom, not the city rules, but the Zoom rules, then we could send those emails into Zoom with video evidence of their behavior.
Again, absolutely. The question would be, does it stop the behavior that's occurring? And I think what you're trying to do is get out in front to try to discourage hate speech at the city council through a variety of different options so that our community doesn't have to go through what's happened in the past. So those are all, Councilmember Mendoza, those are all things we could do. It does not, I think, get to what I believe Councilmember Meyer wants to do here. Vice Mayor Meyer is open back up Zoom comment and how can we discourage those people from participating or quickly shut them down. And those are all reactive after it occurs, and we can do that. And it's been stated, people can create a certified account very, I won't call it easily,
Yeah.
but they can do it, but it is one sense of protection. But the reason I spoke up is the last time this came before City Council, I believe I was the one who brought the staff report. And what I'm trying to figure out is what new is the council asking for us to bring back as part of a future agenda item? And so that we can come back and bring that, instead of just giving you the same staff report we did before and you having the same conversation about a very difficult discussion of how you try to ensure that we're protecting the public, but at the same time provide those people that you want to participate virtually, as the council has talked about, to give that opportunity. So
Yeah, I think
does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I agree with finding a way to be able to ultimately bring back general comment Zoom, right? That would be my goal. I think keeping it to city business, right? So I understand like people are going to sometimes be upset, right? That's what's going to happen. So I don't mind that. If you're not happy with my vote and you want to show up and tell me you're not happy with my vote or the way I looked at an item or whatever, or even us, like staff, like I think that should be on the table because that's an item. They didn't like the way we voted. They didn't like the way it was looked at by staff. That should be fine, but anything else.
That's related to
like,
city business too.
Yeah, because, it's around city business. But I mean, there's been times where people have made like personal attacks on people's clothes or, that kind of stuff. Maybe that that shouldn't be, I mean, what I wear or don't wear, that doesn't come into play on how I do my job. You don't like how I voted. You want to tell me how to vote on an item and why you want me to vote on that item. You don't like what's in a staff report. That's all within that. But if it's not, we should be able to cut them off. And Lafayette is doing it, right? So let's just cut them off. And at some point it's like, is it the city clerk? Like, we're the council. Like, why can't, like, if someone says a word, like if someone, I should be able to come off, I'm like, I cut them off. You want to come after somebody, come after me, right? Because we're the council. We should be able also to say that's not acceptable, right? Because I feel like that's a lot of pressure for Margaret. I'm sorry. I mean, I feel bad for all of you if that's what you have to do. I think that should be, if we're asking for this policy, which makes it a more challenging environment, then we got to own the policy. So
I think that's a really good point, and that's kind of what I was going to get into in a different way. But really, it would be to empower whomever it is cutting people off to know when it's okay to do it. Because I feel like it's too gray at this point. Like there's still that my freedom of speech allows me to say whatever the heck I want to say, and so Margaret's going, and then our mayor's going, and completely understandable because we don't have something very, very specific in place. Kind of like Councilmember Pierson was saying that we announced at the beginning of the meeting. So I think a combination of what we're talking about here, which would really then allow the mayor to strike that gavel and then Margaret to immediately cut off and not even worry about if there's going to be some sort of a retaliation later because she did it too soon. This would be much more clear.
I'd like to see it be somewhere that's on the wall, visible too for every learner. So like a policy and what are our values Like, not talking about the color of somebody's shirt on staff. That's stupid. That's just, I'm sorry.
Or even on the screen on
Yeah, on
Zoom.
the screen on Zoom, yeah. Some of the people who we saw that day are smart idiots. Who know how to work around the system, right? They knew about voice over IPs. I'll tell you, in the court system, we do most of our hearings we do them in person and in Zoom, and which is giving me a benefit because I can do so many more, and I can meet with staff, and it cuts off the time that my clients have to pay me to travel. But people will get back to the email address. What they've been doing is just getting a bunch of email addresses, and then they register those email addresses and log on, and there's been straight porn in court where the bailiffs don't know how to shut it down. And we have kids in court sometimes, we have families there, and it's ridiculous what you see come up in those Zoom settings. So it's not just happening with the city level, it's happening in the court. It's anywhere where Zoom is available. It's a new world after 2020. But I think if we, just to answer Darren's question, because I appreciate it, because we'll just keep having these conversations over and over again. I think what would be good is I would love, in addition to your request, I just love to add to, I support there being a policy. But I also would like for us, again, to say, what are our values? Have a value statement and a policy and procedure that includes Brown Act, that talks about what speech is protected or not, and what rights we have to stop that speech. I'd like to have it, since, we have all this stuff sitting up here now. Thank you, Tim. Add it in there, put it on the wall so everybody sees it. I like to see it where it's visible. And then that way, again, I agree. I don't want to be the one to shut people off, because I'm not trying to get sued as a council member because I violated somebody's free speech. Sorry, Margaret. But I would like the policy in place so Margaret knows, and so the city attorney knows, and the mayor can bang the gavel, and it could just stop right then and there. Because sometimes we're like, well, wait, should we do it? And that shouldn't be the responsibility of Margaret or anybody else. We should all know, when, as one united voice, that this is crossing the line.
And then I don't want to speak exactly for Margaret, but as Margaret sits up here, there's 2 to 3 staff members that are working Zoom, just in case we have another issue that's happened in the past. And if we heard language like that, we're ready to mute them and turn them off. I think, as you know, a little over a month ago, we had multiple names, inappropriate. We had to call just the first name, as you mentioned, the vice mayor, and we were ready to turn that person off if there was any type of statement. So always nice to have a policy, but I would tell you there's multiple staff up here. The last thing we wanted Margaret to do is, it's to be put in that position. It's very difficult as you're sitting there. I mean, even tonight, there was someone who spoke that I'm like, okay, this reminds me of exactly the way someone set up, and then they said something negative, right? They talked about an issue, and then they spoke about an item when it came on, and then they, made negative statements. So I was sitting here ready, like, do we have to mute this person? And so that is already occurring, Councilmember Pierson, that you have multiple staff that's watching the Zoom. It's different when there are comments just by the general public that probably is a gray line. And as you mentioned, Councilmember Mendoza, maybe that I shouldn't say maybe, that's really not the staff's ability to step up and say, hey, this person's out of line. That's really up to the city council.
No, I would like for staff to look into what we can legally. This is very difficult because I very much, and every one of us very much, believe in our constitutional rights for free speech. I would like to have the ability to take it up to the most generous edge of protection for our residents as we could. And have an option as to what that means legally. What is it that we can do to protect our community from, because I have spoken to some of the families that were here, the individuals that were here that night, the first night this happened, they were very much traumatized. It triggered some PTSD responses in some of their families. These are things that I've had people in the community say, well, yeah, it's just words. Well, if you have if you have been victim of terror, it's not just words. And so I would like to find out from staff where can we go? How far can we go to protect our community and still protect the First Amendment rights of our speakers?
And if that's clear, then I would like to make a motion that we move forward with staff time and resources on this item.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
That, I definitely think I would like to move forward with staff time and attention, not just to tell us legally what we can and cannot do. That's been talked about several times in here. I'd like to also staff time and attention to draft a potential policy or craft some recommendations on policy and value statements that we can start to use in order for us to potentially get back online.
Do you think those two go hand in hand, the value statement and the getting back online? Because I don't know if I think we have to talk about what our values are, right? Like, I think I allow a lot more to be said than other people would, right? Like, you might find it offensive, but I'm like, no, like, just let them, like, and Joel and I have Mayor and I have talked about this years ago about, like, let them get it off their chest, right? Like, then they move on. So I just think the values is separate than the legality, but I'm not sure.
So I guess when I say value statement, I say that like the no hate.
Oh,
speech,
yeah.
No, like not value, like don't be meanie. That's too hard to define.
Yeah.
But those type of things, like we do not support Title VII violation, like that kind of stuff is our value system.
Okay.
I would say from a legal perspective,
Okay.
not from what we personally feel is right or wrong.
Okay, yeah.
I would accept that amendment and definitely am looking for a less gray area policy. And I like the idea of a statement. We're already doing that with announcing the time of comments for the evening. I think that's a perfect time to do it.
So staff can bring back some various language for you to consider. In terms of the legality of it, it's all shades of gray once we get into the First Amendment, right? How much is tolerated and how much has to be accommodated through the Brown Act. So we can bring back language for you to consider, and you will just need to consider what sort of risk tolerance you have for that. So that there may be different levels of things for you to consider.
Would you say the risk tolerance was? You just said it as close to. Anyway, whatever he said.
Yes, if you can look back at the tape,
Something
he
about
said
the word
most
generous. Like,
Yeah.
the most generous to the edge of, I
Right.
can't remember. So that's my motion. As convoluted as it ended up.
I second that.
okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. This time, we're down to the final motion, but tonight I would like to adjourn the meeting in honor of Women's History Month. We have some outstanding women leaders in history, but in addition, we have outstanding leaders who are women in our community as well. And so I want to thank all of them for everything that they do to lead us into a better future. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.